Chapter 1457. Saber God Valley Heaven-defying battle prowess, peak domain realm. This was the most terrifying and invincible aspect of an exceptional genius. For example, the Grand Dean of the True Martial Sacred Institute was a rare exceptional genius. Even though his lifespan was depleted and his battle prowess was greatly reduced, as long as the Grand Dean was alive, no Boundary Emperor would dare to cause trouble in the True Martial Sacred Institute. Even someone as powerful as the Tian Fa Quasi-Emperor had only dared to send an incarnation to rescue Lu Qing. However, although exceptional geniuses are terrifying, they have a weakness. They are not abandoned by the heavens. Their mental strength is innate. At most, they can only rely on natural treasures to increase their mental strength. They are not like me, who can use the shaman scripture to cultivate their mental strength. The more Yi Fei understood the difference between him and exceptional geniuses, the more open-minded he became. I have the shaman scripture, so my mental strength will only continue to increase. I also have the battle god Tao, which can continuously increase my battle prowess. This will allow me to be like those exceptional geniuses, able to fight across 10 grades or even higher. As long as I can grasp these 2 points, I will definitely have hope of catching up to those exceptional geniuses and then surpassing them. What? You actually cultivate the mental strength of the shaman tribe? The large green rock felt that something was wrong. It thought that Yi Fei cultivated martial techniques, but it turned out that Yi Fei cultivated the shaman scripture. This kid is simply a freak. The large green rock shook its head and then fell silent. However, the surface of the rock kept emitting a strange green light that shone on Yi Fei's body. It made Yi Fei look like he was wearing a layer of green armor, and he entered a deeper state of comprehension. While Yi Fei was comprehending the Tao, a storm of massacre swept through the entire middle ground. First, a peak genius of a quasi-emperor noble clan was assassinated when he went out for experiential training. The 3 martial monarchs accompanying him were all wiped out. Finally, the head of that peak genius was hung on the gates of the Central Province Empire's imperial capital as a public display. Just as that Boundary Emperor clan was enraged and prepared to head to the Middle Ground Empire to denounce the culprit and search for the murderer, another powerful Boundary Emperor clan had originally nurtured a top genius as the successor of their clan. However, that top genius was found dead in his home. At the same time, his head was missing. It was only discovered 3 days later, hanging in another empire's palace. While the 2 Boundary Emperor clan members were busy searching for the Grand Dean, an intense explosion suddenly came Lu Qing's mountain in the Divine Martial Sacred Institute. Then came the terrifying lightning and the terrifying murderous aura. It shook the entire goddess peak and turned it into dust. Who is it? How dare you behave so atrociously in my Divine Martial Sacred Institute? Noticing that something was wrong, 10-odd quasi-emperors of the Divine Martial Sacred Academy rushed over from all directions at the same time, wanting to find the person who assassinated the Divine Daughter. However, they didn't discover anything. They only saw the shattered mountain peak and Lu Qing's ashen and pale face. Dark red blood flowed out from her sleeves. She was actually injured to a certain degree by the assassin's attack. The Boundary Emperors who rushed over were all shocked. Lu Qing, what happened? Who attacked you? Lu Qing did not say anything. She only showed a determined gaze as she turned and walked to another mountain. From today onwards, I, Lu Qing, will enter closed-door cultivation for 1 year. After 1 year, I will head to the Starry Heavens Ancient Road. Did you hear? Recently, a peak genius of a Boundary Emperor clan was assassinated in front of the civil and military officials and the Emperor in the Black Marsh Empire's imperial court. His head was tossed onto the dragon throne, and the Emperor's face was covered in blood. I heard about it long ago. Later, the furious Black Marsh Empire sealed off the imperial capital and mobilized 1 million soldiers to surround him. In the end, that black-clad youth managed to break through the encirclement and escape unscathed. Gasp. Even an army of 1,000,000 could not block one person. Who exactly was that assassin? At the Divine Martial Sacred Institute's new goddess peak, suddenly a strong wind blew in the sky and slowly landed on the mountain peak. At this moment, dozens of strong figures had already gathered on the mountain peak. These were martial monarchs and quasi-emperors. Even the severely injured Lu Rulong rushed over with a pale face. They were all waiting for that strong wind to descend. As the strong wind descended, a group of cultivators carrying black sabers escorted a youth in astral robes to the ground. The 10-odd quasi-emperors of the Divine Martial Sacred Institute all nodded at these youths with smiles on their faces. The remaining martial monarchs' smiles were clearly laced with flattery. Lu Rulong seemed to know the youth in astral robes leading the group. When he saw this youth appear, his mind, chi, and spirit trembled. He quickly walked over and greeted with a smile, "Ha ha ha." Unexpectedly, the moment the news of Lu Qing being attacked spread, everyone from the Saber God Valley came. What is even rarer is that the little Saber God is personally leading the group. If that girl Qing knew about this, she would definitely be very touched. The youth in astral robes ignored Lu Rulong's words. He only frowned slightly as he looked around. His expression was somewhat nervous as he asked, "Where is Lu Qing? How are her injuries? Who injured her?" "Little Saber God, don't worry. The goddess is fine. The Black Hell Holy Sun's sneak attack did not succeed," the dean of the Divine Martial Sacred Institute personally said. When the youth in astral robes heard this, he heaved a sigh of relief. Then, his tone turned cold as he said coldly, "The Black Hell Holy Sun? Very good." He clearly knew that Lu Qing was the woman that I, Shuiyu, took a fancy to. Yet, he dared to assassinate her. Very good. Immediately pass down my orders. Find the Black Hell Holy Sun's whereabouts within 30 days. I will personally take his head. A black-clothed bladesman immediately knelt down on one knee and said, "Young master, don't worry. Our Saber God Valley is a martial emperor aristocratic clan. We only need 10 days to find an assassin." "Very good. Go and investigate now." The youth in astral robes waved his hand indifferently and dismissed the black-clothed bladesman. Then, he remembered Lu Rulong, who was standing awkwardly at the side, and said, "Senior Lu, you came at the right time. I came all the way here. Why is Lu Qing still unwilling to see me? Is she angry with me?" Cough cough. "Nephew, you worry too much. You are the young master of the Saber God Valley and the man that the goddess admires. When she heard that you are here, she couldn't be happier. Why wouldn't she want to see you?" Lu Rulong explained with a dry smile. Hearing this, Shuiyu felt a little better. However, he was still suspicious. If that's the case, why doesn't Lu Qing come out to see me? Sigh. It's a long story. You know the goddess temper. Lu Qing has a strong personality. This time, she was suddenly assassinated by the Black Hell Holy Sun and even suffered some injuries. This girl must be feeling indignant. She will definitely go into seclusion to cultivate. However, it's good for her to go into seclusion so that the goddess won't be unhappy when she hears those rumors. Lu Rulong sighed. Shuiyu naturally knew that Lu Rulong was implying something. He immediately asked, "What rumors? If you have something to say, just say it." Chapter 1458. Killing with a borrowed knife. Shuiyu was very shocked. He had been in closed-door cultivation recently, making his final preparations for entering the starry heaven's ancient road. He did not care about the outside world. If not for the Black Prison's holy son trying to assassinate Lu Qing, who was a woman that Shuiyu had to obtain, he would not have brought people to the central province. He would not have had the time to chat with a mortal-rank quasi-emperor like Lu Rulong. Could it be that the true martial sacred courtyard has another exceptional genius? Seeing that Shuiyu was not interested in talking to Lu Rulong, a youth about the same age as Shui Yu walked out from behind Lu Rulong. Lu Rulong recognized this youth. His name was Shui Yun, Shui Yu's younger cousin. At the same time, he was a peak genius of the Saber God Valley. Shui Yun did not dare to be negligent. He quickly added fuel to the fire and cursed that Yi Fei is just a person abandoned by the heavens. If not for his luck and colluding with the demonic god, I would have killed him with one slap. What? A person abandoned by the heavens? Isn't that a natural martial Dao trash? Such trash can actually become the holy son of the true martial sacred courtyard and even defeat the divine daughter, Lu Qing? This time, not only was Shui Yun shocked, but even the originally indifferent Shui Yu could not help asking. Lu Rulong rejoiced in his heart. What he wanted was Shui Yu's attention. He immediately told him about how Lu Qing went to challenge Yi Fei and was defeated by Yi Fei. Then, she was forced to become a maidservant. What did you say? That Yi Fei actually dared to make Lu Qing his maidservant? Does he not know that Lu Qing is the woman that I, Shui Yu, like? Shui Yu was finally enraged. When he was angry, the entire divine martial sacred courtyard was filled with a terrifying saber qi. Many martial monarchs felt suffocated. Lu Rulong did not change his expression. He continued, so what if he knows? That vile spawn is a demon from head to toe. Not only did he make Lu Qing his maidservant, he even forced the divine daughter to sleep with him every night. He deliberately made his words very vulgar. These words were like steel needles that pierced Shui Yu's nerves. He was completely enraged. Then, his anger turned into a blade that tore a terrifying crack in the sky. Lu Rulong, is what you said true? That Yi Fei really did that to Lu Qing? Can you guarantee that what you said is true? After the anger, Shui Yu quickly calmed down. After all, he was a peerless genius. Although he was not as good as Di Fan, the war god in white, he was not that easy to fool. Of course, Lu Rulong didn't have the guts to smear Lu Qing's name and deceive Shui Yu. He could only say, that's just a rumor. Even if that demon Yi had 10 times the guts, he wouldn't dare touch a single strand of goddess hair. However, gossip is a fearful thing. Do you know why the goddess doesn't want to see you? It is precisely because of these rumors that the goddess is extremely vexed. So, it's just a rumor. Shui Yu let out a long sigh. However, there was still a thorn in his heart. Even if Yi Fei didn't touch Lu Qing, he still made Lu Qing his maidservant. This was something that Shui Yu absolutely could not tolerate. He looked in the direction of Lu Qing's closed-door cultivation and said sullenly, Lu Qing, don't worry. I'll go and kill Yi Fei right now and help you vent your anger. Lu Rulong rejoiced in his heart and was about to say something. A black-clad bladesman following behind Lu Rulong advised, Young master, you can't do that. The true martial sacred courtyard still has a heaven-grade quasi-emperor. As long as he is alive, the true martial sacred courtyard cannot be touched. So what? That undying old man is about to enter his coffin. Could it be that he dares to go against my Saber God Valley? Furthermore, my woman was humiliated. How can I, Shui Yu, do nothing? Shui Yu's expression was filled with rage. However, there was also a grave look in the depths of his eyes. A heaven-grade quasi-emperor was a peak combat power in the central province. Even an absolute genius like Shui Yu would not be able to shake the position of a heaven-grade quasi-emperor before he matured. However, if he did not do anything, could it be that he was going to allow his woman to suffer all these rumors? Furthermore, it was a fact that Lu Qing had become a maidservant. This was like a thorn in Shui Yu's heart. If he did not remove it, he would not be happy. The best way was to directly kill Yi Fei. Shui Yun, who was at the side, saw Shui Yu's distress. He knew that this was a good opportunity to curry favor with his cousin and the future Valley Master. He immediately volunteered, Brother Yu, he is just a piece of trash. There is no need for an absolute genius like you to make a move. How about I go over and meet this generation's true martial holy son? I can also show that piece of trash how strong the true peak of the martial Tao is. You go over? That's fine too. You come from the Saber God Valley and are a peak genius. I believe that old man will not dare to make a move on you and anger my Saber God Valley. Shuiyu thought about it carefully and discussed with Shuiyun. How about this? We will split into 2 groups. I will lead a group and chase after the Black Hell Holy Sun. You will lead the other group to the true martial sacred courtyard and give that Yi Fei a warning. Give him 10 days to scram here and beg for Lu Qing's forgiveness. Shuiyun patted his chest confidently and said, Brother Yu, just wait and see. In at most 5 days, I guarantee that piece of trash will scram here crying and begging for your and sister-in-law's forgiveness. Go then. Shuiyun was very good with words, especially when he called Lu Qing sister-in-law. This made Shuiyu very satisfied. He had already thought that after killing the Black Hell Holy Sun and capturing Yi Fei to apologize, Lu Qing would definitely be very touched. He also wanted to grab this opportunity and win the heart of this goddess in one fell swoop. Lu Rulong, who was at the side, was even happier. Ever since Yi Fei tricked him with his heavenly tribulation, Lu Rulong not only suffered heavy injuries but also lost all his face. However, he did not have the courage to seek out Yi Fei to settle the score. Although the quasi-emperors insisted that Yi Fei was under the control of the demonic god, which was why he defeated them, such forceful accusations could not harm Yi Fei in the slightest. Until this time, when Lu Qing was attacked and startled the small saber god of the Saber God Valley, Lu Rulong immediately saw the best opportunity to take revenge on Yi Fei. Just as Shuiyun led a group of black-clad bladesmen and turned into a strong wind heading for the true martial sacred courtyard, Lu Rulong's gaze turned cold. While the other quasi-emperors were not paying attention, he secretly crushed a voice transmission talisman in his hand. At the same time, in the small world where the legalists were, an elder rushed into the hall in high spirits. Clan head, great news came from Lu Rulong's side. He has already successfully provoked the small saber god of the saber god to Shuiyu, angering Yi Fei. The other peak genius of the Saber God Valley directly led people to the true martial sacred courtyard. This is great. We finally dealt with that evil creature. Even if that Yi Fei is a demon, he will definitely be badly battered when he meets the small saber god of the Saber God Valley. Humph. This is the result of going against my legalist. He was originally a piece of trash abandoned by the heavens. He deserves such a fate. Clan head is truly wise. He only spread the rumor that Yi Fei slept with Lu Qing. Not only did he provoke the hatred and dissatisfaction of countless outstanding talents of the Central Plains toward Yi Fei, but he also used Lu Rulong to provoke the small saber god's jealousy of Yi Fei. Chapter 1459. In the face of the flattery from the group of FA family elders, the head of the school of legalism couldn't help but reveal a hint of pride on his face. The school of legalism had been the one who had spread unfavorable rumors about Yi Fei. Later on, Lu Qing's accidental assassination had made the head of the school of legalism come up with the idea of getting someone else to do the dirty work. And this saber is a powerful martial emperor family, the Saber God Valley. However, compared to dealing with Yi Fei, the head of the school of FA was more concerned about this. It was still Fa Ihai's situation. He asked the elder who came in, Fa Lu, "How is Fa Ihai's cultivation recently?" Fa Lu comforted him and said, Fa Ihai is very hard-working. Although he is a little old and has missed the best time to cultivate, with the strength of his bloodline, he still has a chance to become a king-stage quasi-emperor in the future. But what? The leader of the school of legalism asked. Fa Lu braced himself and said, "Recently, Chen Mengyao has been very close to Fa Ihai. After all, she was once young master Fa Wu Dao's woman. For her to get close to Fei, it seems a little inappropriate. The patriarch of the school of legalism could not help but laugh. What's wrong with that? I've already considered it. Although Fei is a part of my school of legalism, his bloodline is distant, and he's no different from a regular servant. If a servant becomes the young master of my school of legalism and the future patriarch, where will my school of legalism's dignity go? Patriarch, you mean? Fei Lu cautiously asked. Find him a few more women and have him give birth to a few more children. We can't do anything to adults, but I still know a few methods to deprive children of their bloodline. As long as there was a descendant who could inherit his powerful bloodline, there was no need to keep this slave and those women alive. The school of legalism will not tolerate a servant or his descendant becoming the head of the family. A sinister look suddenly flashed across the young man's face. Fei Wudao's death was his greatest loss, while Fei's appearance gave him a glimmer of hope. However, behind this hope was a bloody darkness. In the blink of an eye, Yi Fei had been cultivating in the true martial sacred hall for almost a year. During this 1 year, Yi Fei had only cultivated the intermediate shaman scripture to its limit and greatly increased his mental energy. Other than that, his martial arts and cultivation had not made much progress. The 9th level of the Battle Demon Path and Battle God Path were too difficult to cultivate. They required an enormous amount of resources, and his Sage's Tower had already been plundered by Shanglu. Even Xiao Chao and the Dragon Turtle were living a tight life. They no longer dared to casually eat the spiritual stones in the beast mark space. The Dragon Turtle was so hungry that it had lost a lot of weight. Every once in a while, it would stealthily wander to the vicinity of the thatched cottage to observe the movements of the large green rock. At the same time, it was also looking for an opportunity to attack. This scared the green rock so much that it didn't dare to leave Yi Fei's side. It could only continue to work hard, allowing Yi Fei to continuously gain enlightenment. Unexpectedly, it allowed Yi Fei to successfully cultivate the last aspect of the true martial 4 aspects, the Azure Dragon Divine Sword. At this moment, the 4 great divine swords were gathered into one. Yi Fei could be considered to have reached the beginner level of this primordial heaven technique. If he wanted to master it, he still needed to condense at least one 4 aspects domain. However, Yi Fei was still busy increasing the power of his Tai Chi domain. He didn't have the energy to comprehend more domains. Moreover, his mental energy was clearly not enough to increase 2 domains at the same time. It seems that to increase 2 domains at the same time, I still need to master a high-level meditation technique. Only then can I cultivate a stronger mental energy. Only when he raised his Tai Chi domain to its limit and reached the peak of the mortal stage did Yi Fei stop cultivating and walk out of the thatched cottage. The large green rock followed closely behind Yi Fei, not giving the dragon turtle a chance to attack. This made the dragon turtle very disappointed. It could only return to Xiao Chao's side in dejection. However, in the past year, Xiao Chao had clearly gained a lot of weight. When Xiao Chao returned, there were many purple bamboos behind the thatched cottage. They swayed slightly as they bade farewell to Xiao Chao. Yi Fei estimated that if these purple bamboos were nurtured by Xiao Chao for a while, they would probably gain sentience. Seeing Xiao Chao treat this place as his home, the large green rock teared up on the spot. It felt that it must have committed an unforgivable sin in its previous life for it to meet Yi Fei, the dragon turtle, and Xiao Chao. It was its nemesis. When Yi Fei was finally willing to leave the true martial sacred hall, the large green rock became even more impatient. It immediately moved the palace to another location. I swear that I will not let them in again, even if they beat me to death. The large green rock viciously hid in the deepest space of the sacred hall. Even a martial emperor would find it hard to detect such a space. Of course, this kind of space was naturally not difficult for Xiao Chao. When she felt that the large blue stone had moved with the palace, Xiao Cao's eyes sparkled. She wanted to run back and play a little game of hide-and-seek with the large bluestone. Naturally, Yi Fei sternly stopped Xiao Qiao from doing so. After all, the large green rock had been squeezed dry in the past year. It was better to wait a few more years for the large green rock to recover. It would not be too late to continue squeezing it dry. This way, it would be better for him to continue squeezing it dry. Anyway, after returning from the ancient path of stars, I can still use the large green rock to continue comprehending the Tao. Yi Fei smacked his lips. He was used to the high efficiency of comprehending the Tao and cultivating. To be honest, he was not used to it suddenly becoming an ordinary cultivation. Big brother, you're finally back. I missed you so much. Xia Jun's happy shout came from the Saint Mountain. However, Yi Fei habitually looked around. Strange, there are no beauties. Xia Jun, why are you so excited? Xia Jun's face was full of black lines. God knew that he was really excited to see Yi Fei return this time. In the past 3 years, Xia Jun had already integrated the Raging Fire bloodline. He was now a Heaven Realm disciple of the Saint Academy. It would not be long before Xia Jun would reach the level of an ordinary saint. What surprised Yi Fei the most was Lin Tianjiao. In the past 3 years, Lin Tianjiao's bloodline had further awakened, from a low-grade bloodline to a mid-grade bloodline. Not long ago, Lin Tianjiao had awakened a high-grade bloodline in the true martial sacred hall and become a top genius. This shocked the 3 deans. One of the quasi-emperor deans even personally came out of seclusion and took Lin Tianjiao as his last disciple. As Yi Fei returned to the Saint Mountain, the entire Saint Mountain gradually became lively again. Not only did Xia Jun and Lin Tianjiao come, but Guowang also brought Lu Zhaoyang and Lu Zhaoyang over. In the past 3 years, the Lu Zhaoyang siblings had improved a lot. They had broken through to the martial sage realm and were preparing to become Earth Realm disciples. They had a breakthrough. On the other hand, Yi Fei's group of followers was still missing. It was only when Yi Fei asked Guowang that he found out that Gong Ji had brought them to the middle region to train and would only be back in a few months. As for the Miss of Shangluo, she was still elusive. Yi Fei guessed that she had brought little Fatty to the Bloodshed Valley to cause trouble for the devil monkeys. Inexplicably, Yi Fei felt sympathy for the group of devil monkeys. He didn't even get to drink the devil monkey wine that he had painstakingly brewed. Instead, a certain profiteer often drank it in big gulps. Another 10 days passed peacefully. Chapter 1460. Gong Ji's words shocked Yi Fei. After failing to assassinate the goddess, he immediately changed his target and went to assassinate Zhao Yu. From this, it could be seen how powerful the Black Hell Saint was. Is Zhao Yu all right? Yi Fei asked anxiously. Yeah, is sister-in-law all right? Xia Jun also interrupted. This made Lin Tianjiao and Lu Zhaoyang look at him strangely. Lu Rian's eyes dimmed. Gong Ji looked at Yi Fei with admiration. First, he had a scandal with the goddess. Now, he had a close relationship with the Heavenly Saint. The saint was really not simple. The Heavenly Saint is fine. I heard that before the Black Hell Saint made his move, she had already gone to the ancient Star Road. Gong Ji was very well informed. This was all thanks to the group of people Yi Fei saved from the Blood Demon sect. Some of them were grateful to Yi Fei and they often contacted Gong Ji. Unintentionally, they also provided Gong Ji with a lot of information. Gong Ji continued, "Oh right, on the way back, I saw a group of geniuses from the Knife God Valley. They seemed to be heading towards the real Martial Sacred Institute." Geniuses from the Knife God Valley? Yi Fei was confused. What kind of power is that? What are they doing at the real Martial Sacred Institute? Gong Ji said worriedly, "The Knife God Valley is a martial emperor family. They occupy a star by themselves and are very powerful. When we saw the experts from the Knife God Valley heading towards the Sacred Institute, we took a shortcut and came back to report this to the saint. I heard that the Knife God has been pursuing the goddess, Lu Qing." Gong Ji and the others looked at Yi Fei worriedly. Xia Jun also had a strange expression. Big brother, the news that you asked Lu Qing to serve you in bed has been spreading like wildfire. Could it be, get lost? If you didn't make Lu Qing your maidservant, how could there be so many rumors? Besides, Shangluo is watching every day. I only asked Lu Qing to make tea for me a few times. Yi Fei glared at Xia Jun. Lu Zhaoyang perked up his ears and listened for a long time. At this moment, he seemed to have heard the implied meaning. He sighed and said, with that lady watching, Brother Yi, you really don't have a chance to do anything. What a pity. That's... Yi Fei nodded subconsciously. But immediately, he felt that something was amiss. It took him a while to react. Was Lu Zhaoyang helping him or tricking him? Yi Fei even felt like releasing the dragon turtle to bite him. But before he could release the dragon turtle, suddenly, the small world of the true martial sacred courtyard shook. Then, a terrifying saber energy tore apart the sky of the small world. A proud voice came from the saber energy. Saber God Valley's Shuiyun has come to visit the true martial saint. Saint, please come out and meet me. Shuiyun's tone was very polite. But his act of tearing apart the small world of the true martial sacred courtyard had already shown that he had come with ill intentions. His behavior was also extremely arrogant. Lu Feng and the other martial emperors were furious. But when they heard the name of the Saber God Valley, their expressions changed again. Yi Fei frowned. Although he was very dissatisfied with the rudeness of the Saber God Valley, the other party was a martial emperor family after all. He was not afraid, but it was not good to provoke a strong enemy for the sacred courtyard. This Shuiyun is coming for me. I'll go and meet him. Yi Fei explained to Lu Feng and the other martial emperors in the void. Then, he soared into the sky and quickly moved out of the small world. At a glance, he saw a row of black-robed swordsmen outside. These swordsmen were very young, but their auras were incomparably powerful. Almost all of them had the strength of a heaven-realm disciple of the sacred courtyard. Only Shuiyun's aura was much stronger than that of the sacred courtyard's holy scions like Lu Rufeng, whom Yi Fei had seen before. This was especially so when he tore a hole in the small world of the true martial sacred courtyard with one saber strike. Such an attack power was already comparable to that of an ordinary quasi-emperor. This person is a strong enemy, Yi Fei said as he sized up the other party. A half-stepped martial emperor who has been abandoned by the heavens. Interesting. No wonder you could defeat Lu Qing. Shuiyun hugged a saber with both hands. Although he was surprised by Yi Fei's strength, his tone was still filled with strong confidence. This was the confidence of a martial emperor family. Compared to the quasi-emperor families of the Central Plains that could only occupy small worlds and the sacred courtyard, the martial emperor family that occupied the starry heavens was a colossus. They naturally stood above everyone else. Therefore, even though Shuiyun sensed that Yi Fei's aura was very strong, he still had a cold and arrogant expression on his face. This caused Yi Fei to feel very displeased in his heart. What was so great about a martial emperor clan? Tearing apart another person's small world was no different from declaring war. Did Lu Qing send you here? Yi Fei suppressed his anger and inquired about this person's intentions. No, I came here on my own accord. Yi Fei, do you know that Lu Qing is the woman that my Saber God Valley's young master likes? She is the future wife of the Saber God Valley's young master. In the end, not only did you force her to become your maidservant, but you also spread extremely unsightly rumors. You have to apologize to my Saber God Valley for this matter. Shuiyun's tone contained a trace of mockery and provocation. If Yi Fei knew what was good for him, he would immediately admit defeat and obediently apologize to Shuiyun. If he did not, Shuiyun believed that with his strength, he could definitely beat Yi Fei into kneeling and begging for mercy. Yi Fei immediately sensed the hidden malice in Shuiyun's words. Originally, he wanted to explain, but the other party's attitude still angered him. Without thinking, he retorted, "May I ask if your Saber God Valley's young master is married to Lu Qing?" "No." Shui Yun shook his head. "Have Lu Qing and your young master become Dao companions?" Yi Fei continued to ask. It's only a matter of time before the goddess marries into our Saber God Valley." Shui Yun did not answer directly. Instead, his tone was cold and arrogant. Yi Fei nodded and then shook his head. "If that's the case, your young master is neither married nor Dao companions with Lu Qing. Then why does he have to worry? What does the matter between Lu Qing and me have to do with him? Before I lose my temper, get lost immediately. The real martial sacred courtyard does not welcome you." Boom! Yi Fei's words were like a clap of thunder. Many disciples of the real martial sacred courtyard were secretly shocked. When they heard that it was the martial emperor family who came to cause trouble, many disciples were already afraid and lost their imposing manner. In the end, Yi Fei used a domineering tone to fiercely counterattack. However, this kind of counterattack was reasonable and full of strength. Many disciples resonated in their hearts. That's right. What does the young master of the Saber God Valley mean? Lu Qing is neither married to him nor Dao companions with him. What right does he have to cause trouble in our real martial sacred courtyard? It's one thing to cause trouble, but he also directly tore apart our small world. Could it be that the Saber God Valley wants to declare war on our real martial sacred courtyard? Saint, give the order. They have already bullied us at our doorstep. If we don't do anything, people will think that our real martial sacred courtyard is easy to bully. While they were speaking, the disciples of the real martial sacred courtyard had all rushed out angrily. They were a black mass and stood neatly behind Yi Fei. Obviously, after the divine martial sacred courtyard's provocation 3 years ago, the real martial sacred courtyard had also completed a transformation in the crisis. Chapter 1461. Good. Good. This is the spirit of the true martial sacred courtyard, the heart of sincerity. This is the spirit of the true martial spirit, the spirit of a martial artist. The martial emperors of the sacred courtyard were all very old. They had personally experienced the glory of the sacred courtyard, and they had also personally witnessed the decline of the sacred courtyard. They had seen prosperity and experienced desolation. However, they had never forgotten the spirit of the true martial spirit, the heart of a pure child. Originally, when the third Dean Shi Yingqing had decided to let Yi Fei become the Holy Son, some of the martial emperors were still doubtful. They were worried that with Yi Fei's special status, he would not be able to support the sacred courtyard. He might even cause the sacred courtyard to exhaust its last bit of strength. That was until 3 years ago when the Divine Lady, Lu Qing, personally came and defeated all the martial emperors. It was difficult to find a match for her. It was Yi Fei who stood up and defeated Lu Qing with absolute strength. This gave them hope. 3 years later, when the Saber God Valley's genius was stronger than the Divine Lady, it was Yi Fei again. He stood up and used absolute confidence and domineeringness to fight back against the other party's rude provocation. He won the hearts of all the disciples. Many of the martial emperors could not help but sigh when they saw the youth. It was as if they had returned to a few hundred years ago when the true martial sacred courtyard was at its peak. Facing Yi Fei's fierce counterattack, the Saber God Valley's geniuses were shocked. Strange. Didn't they say that the true martial sacred courtyard had declined? Are these people crazy? Where did they get the confidence to be so disrespectful to our martial emperor aristocratic families? True martial Holy Son, how dare you? Do you know how strong our Saber God Valley is? It's not too late for you to apologize now. Shui Yun was also a little surprised. He felt that the current true martial sacred courtyard was a little different from the rumors. However, Shui Yun could not tell what was different. He only knew that the current true martial sacred courtyard made him feel very depressed and unhappy. He even felt like he was suffocating. He had to break the current situation. The way to break the current situation was to let these people know how strong the martial emperor aristocratic families were. They had to understand how terrifying the Saber God Valley was. Shui Yun's threat was indeed effective. Although they were extremely dissatisfied with Shui Yun's provocation of the Sacred Institute, many disciples knew how terrifying the martial emperor clans were. For a moment, many Heaven Stage disciples couldn't help but secretly look at Yi Fei. Some even directly inquired about Yi Fei's attitude. "Holy Son, what should we do? What else can we do?" There's a saying in the northern region. To our friends, we have strong liquor. To our enemies, we have weapons. Now let me add, we still have saliva for some cheese. Puff. How could a dignified Holy Son be so unhygienic and spit at the spot where Shui Yun was standing in public? Many martial emperors were stunned. However, many disciples were extremely excited. As Shui Yun's underling, Xia Jun immediately followed suit. Lin Tianjiao, Gua Wang, and the others were not willing to be left behind. They all spat at Shui Yun. Gong Ji and the others were even more impolite. They were Yi Fei's followers. Now that Yi Fei had made a move, they would naturally follow his orders. When the other disciples saw this, they also didn't have any scruples. Suddenly, almost half of the tens of thousands of disciples of the Sacred Institute opened their mouths and spat. The remaining half of the female disciples, including Shangluo, also blushed. They secretly cursed their Holy Son for being so unhygienic. Couldn't he just throw stones? How could they do that? Of course, many male disciples were secretly delighted. They didn't expect that there would be a day when they could spit at a top genius. Although the Holy Son's method is a little intense, why do I suddenly feel so good in my heart? Move aside. This might be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to spit at a top genius in public. Don't block the way. I want to spit again so that I can boast in the future. Me too. I want to spit a few more times too. How dare he behave so atrociously in our Sacred Institute? Even if I can't kill him, I will spit him to death. Instantly, the sky was filled with spit. It rained down on the geniuses of the One-Blade Divine Valley. If spit could kill, the geniuses of the Blade Divine Valley would have been spat to death tens of thousands of times. The black-clothed swordsmen felt their scalps go numb. Their faces were filled with extreme shock and fear. They had encountered all kinds of opponents before. However, this kind of opponent who spat at them the moment they met was enough to make them lose all their combat strength. They could only run away pathetically. Shui Yun was so angry that his stomach was about to explode. However, he had no choice but to lead his subordinates and retreat pathetically. He was afraid that they would be drowned by the spit. If they were drowned, they wouldn't have the face to continue living. They would have to kill themselves. Yi Fei, you are courting death. When they finally retreated to a safe place, black smoke was rising from the heads of Shui Yun and the other geniuses of the Blade Divine Valley. Following that, a formless will swept over from afar like a sharp blade. It also released an extremely oppressive aura that made people feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. A veteran son of heaven was the first to react. He quickly shouted to Yi Fei, "Holy Son, be careful. This is the Blade Divine Valley's unique undefeatable intent." That's right. This is my, Shui Yun's, undefeatable intent. Yi Fei, do you dare to accept it? Shui Yun's face was filled with rage. However, he didn't lose his rationality. He only proposed to compete with Yi Fei in terms of intent. He didn't actually attack Yi Fei. It was clear that he was worried about something. Yi Fei nodded inwardly. Shui Yun had his concerns, but so did he. Otherwise, he wouldn't have spat at Shui Yun's rude provocation. He would have attacked directly. After all, he was still a holy son and represented the true martial sacred academy. If he really fought with Shui Yun, it would force the true martial sacred academy and the Blade Divine Valley to become enemies. Similarly, the reason why Shui Yun didn't attack him was because he was worried about the Supreme Dean, who was a heaven-tier sub-emperor. Therefore, Shui Yun changed to another method of confrontation. That was to compete with their undefeatable intent. Intent was a cultivator's confidence. Crushing the opponent's intent was no different from defeating the opponent. Competing with undefeatable intent? Fine, since you want to compete, I will compete with you. Kill. Yi Fei's body suddenly emitted a terrifying murderous aura. This murderous aura instantly transformed into a terrifying sword light. It wasn't a real sword. It was the physical manifestation of Yi Fei's undefeatable intent. This manifestation couldn't harm the opponent's body, but it could destroy the opponent's fighting spirit. It could even destroy a genius because of this. Therefore, although this battle seemed gentle, it was actually more dangerous than a real battle. When they felt the undefeatable intent released by Yi Fei and Shui Yun, even the heaven-tier disciples were shocked and their faces turned pale. Retreat. Lin Tianjiao and the other heaven-tier disciples hurriedly protected the other disciples and frantically retreated. Chapter 1462. Shangluo was able to calmly watch the show. However, the martial monarchs who were watching the battle were all shocked. Only the top geniuses and above were able to form an undefeatable will. Firstly, they were very talented. Secondly, only the top geniuses and exceptional geniuses could reach an undefeatable level. It was very rare for cultivators below the level of top geniuses to form an undefeatable will. Even if they did, the undefeatable will would be very weak. After one or two defeats, the undefeatable will would crumble, and they would never be able to recover. However, Yi Fei was different. Even though Yi Fei was not a top genius, he was able to form an undefeatable will. What was even more ridiculous was that his undefeatable will could materialize like a top genius and form an attack. This was very inconceivable. When they saw the illusory sword formed by Yi Fei's undefeatable will, not only were the martial monarchs shocked, even the geniuses of the Saber God Valley couldn't help but exclaim. Then, both parties saw an illusory sword shadow and an illusory blade light in the sky. They were like two stars that collided violently, causing the void to tremble. It was as if it could not withstand the collision of these two wills. The martial monarchs sent out their spiritual consciousnesses, and they were completely shattered by the collision of the two wills. They couldn't continue to exist. Those experts who had also extended their divine senses to watch this battle of wills suddenly felt a sharp pain in their heads. They could only feel the collision of wills between the two sides. Their spiritual consciousnesses actually felt like they were being torn apart by the saber and sword. Heavens, are they really only half martial monarchs? This kind of will, this kind of attack, even an ordinary martial monarch or half-martial emperor might not be able to use it. As expected of a top genius from a martial emperor family. Just this undefeatable will alone is enough for us heaven-ranked disciples to not be able to withstand it. TSK. That's impossible. Isn't the true martial saint a person abandoned by the heavens? He is a piece of trash on the martial path. It's strange that he could form an undefeatable will. What's more terrifying is that his undefeatable will is comparable to a top genius like Shui Yun. The group of black-clothed swordsmen from the Blade God Valley were dumbfounded. They were all geniuses of the Blade God Valley. Any one of them was comparable to the saint of the Sacred Institute. But at this moment, facing Yi Fei's invincible will, they actually felt a deep sense of fear. They couldn't even muster up the slightest bit of fighting spirit against Yi Fei. I didn't expect a piece of trash like you to have such a strong invincible will. However, you are not a peerless genius. As long as your invincible will is shattered once, you will never be able to have it again. Shui Yun's eyes were red. The saber light on his body burned even more fiercely. It was as if an invisible sword had appeared between heaven and earth. The blade of the sword slashed towards Yi Fei. You want to crush my invincible will? If you can't, then Shui you won't be able to either. Yi Fei's eyes flashed with a trace of frost. The unrivaled sword shadow suddenly formed a terrifying beam of light that mercilessly slashed towards Shui Yun. Boom! The void shook violently. If one took a closer look, they would see that the vibration was caused by the continuous collision between an invisible sword and an invisible blade. Originally, the will was invisible. None of the surrounding warriors could see the saber light and sword shadows. But in their minds, the scene of the intense collision between the saber and the sword automatically appeared. At the same time, Yi Fei's face became paler and paler in this collision. His body kept shaking, and so did Shui Yun. Although the battle of wills wouldn't harm each other's bodies, it would greatly deplete each other's mental strength. Shui Yun obviously played a trick here. He was a top genius, so his mental strength was definitely stronger than an ordinary warrior's. Under normal circumstances, the winner of this battle of wills would definitely be Shui Yun, who was a top genius. Unfortunately, Shui Yun encountered Yi Fei, who had cultivated an intermediate-level shaman sutra. Perhaps it was more difficult for a person who had been abandoned by the heavens to cultivate martial arts. But in terms of shaman arts, he was abandoned by the heavens. He seemed to have a very obvious advantage. After the two's wills clashed more than 10 times, Yi Fei felt that his mental strength had reached its limit. Without hesitation, he immediately mobilized the spirit sea that he had just cultivated. He immediately felt that his exhausted mental strength was like a dried-up land that had suddenly been injected with a trickle of water. These trickles of water nourished his mental strength and also strengthened his undefeatable will. Yi Fei's pale face gradually turned rosy. The aura around his body kept increasing. In an instant, he turned from a short hill to a steep mountain peak, then from a steep mountain peak to a towering mountain peak. Then, he turned into an unshakable mountain range. As his aura rose, the sword shadows formed by Yi Fei's undefeatable will became sharper and more aggressive. In the end, when this invisible will was emitted, there was actually a continuous clanging of swords in the sky. I, Shui Yun, am a top genius of a martial emperor clan. I will definitely not lose to a person abandoned by the heavens. Pooh! Shui Yun roared. Suddenly, he bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood. The saber light formed by his undefeatable will suddenly turned from illusory to real, forming a real saber light that slashed at Yi Fei. Fei. That's the true saber. It's a special secret technique of the Saber God Valley. I didn't expect Shui Yun to be so despicable. He said that it was a contest of will, but he actually integrated martial arts into his will. Bullshit. Since it's a contest of will, it's not against the rules for both parties to use will to fight. Seeing that Shui Yun suddenly attacked, the disciples of the true martial sacred institution immediately quarreled with the genius of the Saber God Valley. However, no one dared to interfere in this battle. This was because when Shui Yun activated the true saber, the wills of both parties had already been entangled. Any external interference would have a huge impact on the wills of both parties. Everyone could only watch as Shui Yun used the true saber to slash at Yi Fei's undefeatable will. Yi Fei also sneered. Suddenly, he gathered all the mental strength in his spiritual sea and integrated it into his own will. Inside his will, boom, boom, the sky suddenly shook violently. At the same time, when Shui Yun activated the true saber, Yi Fei's will turned into a sword of reality in an instant. This time, everyone could clearly see a light blue saber shadow and a sapphire sword shadow fiercely slashing at each other. The moment the saber and sword collided, the light blue saber shadow suddenly shattered like glass. On the other hand, the sapphire sword shadow did not move. It was like a majestic sword peak that was unshakable and inviolable. Shui Yun coughed out a large mouthful of blood. He glared at Yi Fei, his eyes filled with shock and humiliation. After that, he didn't say anything. The moment his invincible will collapsed, he fainted. His body fell powerlessly from the sky and was caught in the arms of a black-robed swordsman. This is impossible. True martial saint, where did you learn the true saber from? A genius of the saber god Valley asked sternly as he recovered from his shock. Chapter 1463. Yi Fei shook his head. He no longer had a good impression of the machete god Valley. In fact, the so-called true blade and true sword were just a means to attack one's mental strength. Anyone who had mastered mental strength would be able to use them. However, Shui Yun's true saber was a technique. He used a special technique to form a special attack with his limited mental power. Yi Fei was different. Although he did not have the same technique as Shui Yun, he had already cultivated a mental sea. His mental power could be said to be boundless. He might as well use brute force to break through the technique. He forcefully condensed his mental power into a strand. This way, he could form a special mental attack. To put it bluntly, the true saber was actually a clever use of mental power. However, most cultivators had weak mental power and were unable to form an attack. Only a strong mental power could allow a formless mental power to form a special attack. This was the specific secret of the true saber. Shui Yun had also discovered this secret. That was why his face was filled with shock and fear before he fainted. Clearly, Shui Yun had not expected Yi Fei's mental power to actually surpass a top genius like him. Yi Fei could even form a special attack and shatter his mental will in one fell swoop. It's just a simple use of mental power. Why would I need to secretly learn it? Take Shui Yun and scram immediately. My real martial sacred courtyard does not welcome you, Yi Fei said coldly. His words resonated with the other disciples. It was one thing for these people to provoke them, but they even tore apart the real martial sacred courtyard's small world. This was no different from slapping them in the face. Not to mention, Shui Yun had despicably used a mental attack during the Battle of Wills. He wanted to defeat Yi Fei and destroy the Holy Sun who had led everyone to rise. This caused the crowd to be furious. Didn't you hear what the Holy Sun said? The Holy Sun told you to scram. Why aren't you scramming? The Saber God Valley is amazing. To think that you are a martial emperor aristocratic family. Your methods are actually so despicable. Top geniuses? A disciple with a bad temper opened his mouth and started spitting again. Many disciples responded to him. Shui Yun had already woken up when he suddenly saw the scene of countless saliva being sprayed at him. He was so angry that he saw stars. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted again. The other black-clothed swordsmen were also horrified. Seeing that Shui Yun had been defeated, they hurriedly turned and ran. Yi Fei, just you wait. My Blade God Valley will remember what happened today. These black-clad bladesmen did not forget to make threat. Please go back and tell Shui Yun not to provoke me. Otherwise, the consequences will be dire. Yi Fei warned in a deep voice. The group of black-clothed swordsmen trembled. It was one thing for Yi Fei to defeat Shui Yun, but he even dared to provoke Small Sword God? This wretched trash abandoned by the heavens. Does he really think that our Blade God Valley doesn't dare to touch him? He defeated Shui Yun and stole the Saber of Truth. This person's crimes are unforgivable. Let's go back and report this person's rudeness to the young master. The group of black-clothed swordsmen left sullenly. They stepped on their battle swords and formed a sword formation. Then, they turned into a gust of wind and disappeared into the distant sky. Seeing the black-clothed swordsman's performance, Yi Fei's brows were clearly knitted together. His face suddenly turned pale. This was a side effect caused by him expending a large amount of mental strength. After all, his Saber of Truth was formed by using force to break through technique. There was no technique involved. To put it bluntly, it was just using his enormous mental strength to fight. Even though he defeated Shui Yun in the end, he paid a huge price. However, Shui Yun was not the strongest in the Blade God Valley. Above him, there was still small sword god Shui Yu. Shui Yu is the young master of the Blade God Valley and is also known as Small Sword God. His abilities are definitely much stronger than Shui Yun. I used all my strength just to deal with Shui Yun. If I were to encounter Shui Yu, I would definitely lose. Thinking of this, Yi Fei suddenly felt a little lucky. Fortunately, it was Small Sword God who came this time. Fortunately, I had already mastered the mid-level Sorcerer Sutra before Shui Yun came. Without the mid-level Sorcerer Sutra, Yi Fei would not have had any chance of winning against Shui Yun's willpower. After all, Shui Yun was not only a top-notch genius, but he also came from a martial emperor family. The top-notch geniuses of martial emperor families were generally stronger than the quasi-emperor families. For example, Shui Yun's unrivaled willpower was even scarier than Goddess Lu Qing's. That's strange. Shui Yun is only a top-notch genius. Why do I feel that he is even stronger than Goddess Lu Qing? Lin Tianjiao suddenly asked curiously. There are two reasons. First, the martial emperor families occupy the planet. The resources they control are definitely 10 times, or even dozens of times more than the quasi-emperor families. Second, the martial emperor families also control the sole true dominion that the quasi-emperor families cannot control. Yi Fei analyzed in a deep voice. Sole true dominion? What's that? Xia Jun, Gong Ji, and the others looked at Yi Fei in confusion. They were all unfamiliar with the sole true dominion. Shangluo was the only one who looked at Yi Fei in shock. Then, he explained to everyone, the sole true dominion is a special domain that contains only one intent. This domain is not only pure, but it can also evolve continuously. However, it is too difficult to master the sole true dominion. Not only does it require a huge amount of resources, but it also requires one to convert a intent dominion into a martial emperor. Turning a power Upanishad into a territory is enough to baffle 99% of the warriors. If they aren't the top geniuses, they shouldn't count on them. Anyway, this man might have some hope. Shangluo then glanced at Yi Fei meaningfully. Yi Fei was speechless. He knew that Shangluo had probably guessed the secret behind his ability to cultivate mind strength. After all, one had to possess a powerful mind strength in order to form the sole true dominion. Other than exceptional geniuses and top-notch geniuses, the average human had very weak mind strength or none at all. The main strength of a martial artist was the principal spirit and spirit qi. Mind strength was secondary and very difficult to improve. Unless that martial artist was like Yi Fei, who had been forsaken by the heavens and had mastered the Magus Tao. The Sutra. The troublemakers had been chased away. Seeing that there was nothing else, the disciples who had gathered dispersed in 2s and 3s and busied themselves with their own affairs. Third Dean Xiangqing also reappeared at the Saint Mountain. He had a complicated expression on his face, but more than that, he was surprised. However, he did not ask how Yi Fei had obtained such a powerful mind strength. Instead, he smiled bitterly and said, "Among the generations of saints of the true martial sacred academy, you are the best at causing trouble. You have offended 3 great saints." Chapter 1464. What? Yi Fei, you want to resign from your position as saint? Lin Tianjiao and the others were shocked. Saint, please reconsider. Gong Ji and the others hurriedly tried to persuade him. Now that Yi Fei had finally appeared in the true martial sacred academy, he could lead the sacred academy to rise. This was also why they chose to follow Yi Fei. Yi Fei shook his head. The sacred academy isn't strong because of the saint, but because of all of you. It's because of our unity and sincerity that it became strong. Besides, it's precisely because I'm the saint that I can't drag the entire sacred academy into an enmity with the Blade God Valley because of my matters. If I do that, I'll only benefit the mastermind. Xia Jun was quick-witted. He connected the dots and said in shock, "This matter is indeed strange. Could it be that someone is deliberately targeting Big Brother and the true martial sacred academy? It's not could it be, it's definitely." Shi Yingqing shook his head. Lu Qing is not only the goddess of the sacred academy, but also the peerless genius of the Lu family. Even if she was unworthy of being a maid, no one would dare to gossip about her, let alone spread it throughout the Central Plains. There must be someone behind this matter. Then Dean, do you know who wants to harm Yi Fei? Shangluo asked. Shi Yingqing smiled bitterly. If I knew, I would have personally chopped that person into pieces. However, the 3 sacred academies won't do this. They can't afford to offend a quasi-emperor family. Only a quasi-emperor family can offend a quasi-emperor family. Shi Yingqing said some very tongue-twisting words, causing many people to be confused and unable to make heads or tails of it. However, there were also a small number of people who lowered their heads thoughtfully. Yi Fei thought about it carefully and felt that Shi Yingqing's analysis was very reasonable. Only a quasi-emperor family would dare to risk offending the Tianfa quasi-emperor and slander Lu Qing's innocence. And there seemed to be only one quasi-emperor family that had a grudge with him. Looks like it's time to contact Fei. Yi Fei's eyes flashed coldly. Fei was the spy he had placed in the legalism school. It would be best if everyone lived in peace. If the school of legalism dared to secretly attack him, he could guarantee that the school of legalism would never have peace. Yi Fei winked at Guo Wang, who nodded and quietly withdrew from the crowd. At the same time, Shi Yingqing had no choice but to reluctantly agree to Yi Fei's resignation. Yi Fei, you can resign from your position as the chosen son. However, we will wait for you to return from the ancient path of stars before you decide on a new chosen son. Will you? Of course I will. Yi Fei nodded with a smile. Lin Tianjiao and the others didn't object either. They knew that Yi Fei didn't want the Sacred Institute and the Valley of the Knife God to become enemies. Shi Yingqing nodded in agreement on the surface, but in reality, he still regarded Yi Fei as the Holy Son. It was just that he no longer had the status of a saint. This way, Yi Fei would no longer be restricted by his status as the Holy Son. The next time the Valley of the Knife God provoked him, he would be able to retaliate without worrying about the true martial Sacred Institute being implicated. After all, once Yi Fei stepped onto the ancient path of stars, he would officially graduate from the true martial Sacred Institute. Yi Fei, remember this. Regardless of whether you graduate or not, you will always be a member of the true martial Sacred Institute in our hearts. You can come back whenever you want. As long as the few of us old fellows are alive, no one in the central region will be able to harm you. Shi Yingqing suddenly said to Yi Fei solemnly before he left. Yi Fei also said, "Don't worry, Dean. If the Sacred Institute doesn't betray me, I won't betray the Sacred Institute." Gong Ji and the others clicked their tongues when they heard this. They hadn't expected that Yi Fei would say such words when the dean thought so highly of him. Although these words sounded reasonable, there was a subtle hint of rejection in them. If any other disciple dared to say such words in front of a quasi-emperor, the quasi-emperor would have already slapped them. He would even suspect that this person harbored ill intentions and was disloyal to the Sacred Institute. But after hearing Yi Fei's promise, Shi Yingqing was very happy. With a face full of smiles he said, "Good, good. With your words, to be able to nurture a disciple like you, us old fellows can die without regret." 3 days later, the news of Yi Fei's resignation as the Sacred Son officially spread throughout the true martial Sacred Institute. At the same time, it also informed the 3 sacred institutes that were currently unfriendly. When they heard that Yi Fei was finally no longer the Sacred Son, some people were happy, while others were sad. The happy ones were naturally the young talents of the central region. In their opinion, The true martial sacred institute had removed Yi Fei from the position of sacred son as a compromise to the recent rumors. It was also a kind of apology to goddess Lu Qing. Naturally, they were happy. However, those who were in the know only sneered when they heard this news. They understood that the true martial sacred institute's actions were just superficial. It was like a junior who had done something wrong and was casually scolded by the elders in the family. However, they could not find any fault with it. Yi Fei had resigned as the sacred son and graduated early. He could no longer continue to represent the true martial sacred institute. This way, any actions they took against Yi Fei would not implicate the true martial sacred institute. Those old bastards of the true martial sacred institute are simply shameless. When the news reached the legalism school, the head of the legalism school was so angry that his nose was crooked. He had put in so much effort not only to slander Lu Qing's innocence. His main goal was to frame Yi Fei and also to provoke the true martial sacred institute, the Divine Valley's hostility. Then, as long as the Divine Blade Valley casually produced a Heaven Realm Quasi-Emperor, it would be enough to completely destroy the true martial sacred institute that had risen again. Unfortunately, Yi Fei's move of retreating in order to advance had destroyed all the hard work of the head of the legalism school. The head of the legalism school suddenly felt a sharp pain in his heart. This news naturally reached the Divine Wrath Quasi-Emperor's Lu family as well. When he heard that Yi Fei had resigned as the sacred son and graduated early, the Divine Wrath Quasi-Emperor was somewhat surprised. Could it be that the news from the legalism school was wrong? That this brat was not controlled by the demon god and reached his current position with his own strength? If that's the case, then the legalism school's arrangements have all been in vain. My granddaughter's innocence is also at stake. Fa Dongxian, you old bastard, how dare you mislead me? Bang! When he saw that Yi Fei had defeated Shuiyun, the Divine Wrath Quasi-Emperor flew into a rare rage. If he knew that Yi Fei had not become the demon god's lackey but had gradually grown up with his own strength, the Divine Wrath Quasi-Emperor would have been furious. When Yi Fei had left the Middle Province, the Divine Wrath Quasi-Emperor would have definitely taken action. He would have personally gotten rid of Yi Fei in secret. He would never have given Yi Fei a chance to grow. However, he could not do so now. Yi Fei had completely grown up and had clearly received the full protection of the quasi-emperors of the true martial sacred academy. If he were to kill Yi Fei now, the Grand Principal, Shi Yingqing, and the other quasi-emperors, he would definitely destroy the Lu family even if he had to risk his life. Even if he could not destroy the Lu family, he could still kill Lu Qing and avenge Yi Fei. When he thought of this, the Divine Wrath Quasi-Emperor suddenly had a strange expression. Aren't people abandoned by the heavens always plagued with misfortune and misfortune? Why is this brat always so lucky? Perhaps this has something to do with the fact that I found a pig teammate. Shut. The Divine Wrath Quasi-Emperor was very depressed. Because of these pig teammates of the legalism school, he had lost both his granddaughter and his reputation. He could not help but fly into a rage out of humiliation. Although Yi Fei had stepped down from his position as the saint, he still lived on the Saint Mountain confidently and confidently. The disciples of the Sacred Academy did not object to this. Gong Ji and the others continued to be Yi Fei's followers, guarding the Saint Mountain dutifully. Xia Jun and the others also moved back from their respective palaces. Everyone gathered together, laughing and joking every day. It was a very happy time. Chapter 1465. Xia Jun asked, Lin Tianjiao, where are you going? My raging fire bloodline has been fully integrated. It's time to give the beauties of Zhongzhou a chance to love me. Lin Tianjiao, Yi Fei, Lu Zhaoyang and his brother. In the end, after a difficult choice, Lin Tianjiao seriously rejected the option of going on an adventure with Xia Jun. He even changed his mind and said, Ahem, I want to go back to the northern region to see my family first. Then I'll decide where to go for the adventure. Is that so? That's great. After hearing about the grand occasion of Big Brother's return, I plan to return home as well. I want to show off and bring the Immortal Fist sect to greater height. Tianjiaolin, we're going the same way. What a coincidence! After being in the Middle Continent for so long, Xia Jun was obviously homesick. Lin Tianjiao was stunned. Only then did he remember that Xia Jun was also a warrior from the Outer Sea and was very close to the northern region. If he found an excuse to go home, he would have no excuse to not go with Xia Jun. Well, actually, I don't really want to go back to the northern region. Lin Tianjiao pondered for a moment, trying to figure out what to do so that he wouldn't travel with the Xia army. It wasn't that he despised the Xia army, it was just that the Xia army's ambitions were too strong and too dangerous. Yi Fei silently looked at Lin Tianjiao with sympathy. But when he thought of Lin Tianjiao going back to the northern region, he took the opportunity to pull Lin Tianjiao aside and said, Lin Tianjiao, since you're going back to the northern region, you can pass on a message to senior brother Jing. The two of you will go to the Six-Path Sacred Sects together and get the inheritance inside. Six-Path Sacred Sects? Except for you, the 4 heavenly talents have all failed. Can we still go in? Lin Tianjiao asked in surprise. Yi Fei nodded vigorously and said, Of course we can. Don't forget that I can reach where I am today because of the inheritance of the sacred sects. Sage Sect Inheritance. Lin Tianjiao's breathing quickened. Of course, he knew that the reason why Yi Fei could rise so quickly and become invincible in the northern region was because of the God of War Dao that he obtained from the 6 Dao Saint sects. Of course, Yi Fei's true strength was not only the battle god Dao, but also the battle demon Dao. However, this didn't stop Lin Tianjiao from looking forward to joining the 6 sacred sections. I'll definitely go to the 6 Dao sacred sect. I'll also pass on your message to Jing Wushou. Lin Tianjiao said seriously. I look forward to your good news. Yi Fei patted Lin Tianjiao's chest to encourage him. He was also happy. The guardian elder had said that if he could gather all the inheritors of the 6 Paths Sacred Sect, he would have a chance to learn the 6 Paths Sacred Sect's immemorial heavenly art. Furthermore, the path of martial arts was long and arduous. It was also a very good thing to have a few like-minded friends to walk down the path with. With Lin Tianjiao and senior brother Jing's current potential, passing the Sage Sect's test shouldn't be too much of a problem. Now only the Sky One Palace is left. Yi Fei thought silently. Then, he asked Lin Tianjiao, by the way, is there any news from Fu Renjia? No. Lin Tianjiao shook his head. The two sighed together. 3 days later, Lin Tianjiao still left. The reason why he waited for another 3 days was naturally because Xia Jun had to return to the outer sea with too many things. Lin Tianjiao waited for a full 3 days. Xia Jun dawdled for a while before the 3 of them left together. Yi Fei thought for a while and decided to let little fatty Pang Bei follow him out to gain experience. In the end, he really didn't feel at ease leaving little fatty in Shanglua's care. With little fatty's temperament, it would be difficult for him to improve his strength. However, the occasional danger could often force out little fatty's potential. In that case, it would be better to go out and gain experience. With Lin Tianjiao's strength and Xia Jun's flexible mind, they would be able to take good care of Pang Bei. As for Lu Rian and her brother, due to the recent massacre by the Black Hell Saint, they, who had merged with the Shadow Dancer bloodline, didn't dare to casually leave the Holy Court. They could only be at ease and continue to cultivate in the Holy Court. Yi Fei also instructed Guo Wang and Gong Ji to take care of the 2 of them when they were free. Then, Yi Fei took some time to instruct Gong Ji and the others in their cultivation. After all, these people were his followers and disciples of the Holy Court. Yi Fei had to leave something behind for the Holy Court before embarking on the ancient path of the stars. At the same time, this was the responsibility of the previous saints. Shangluo also didn't leave and continued to cultivate in the Saint Mountain. He even directly used the Saint Tower that originally belonged to the Saint. There were also Heaven Stage disciples who tried to protest and fight for the right to use the Saint Tower. However, Shangluo found the Grand Principal and publicly announced that Shangluo was using the Saint Tower. The right to use the Saint Tower. Even though it was only an indistinct image of the utmost exalted headmaster, and even his appearance could not be seen clearly, everyone was certain that it was the utmost exalted headmaster. That aged voice was truly too familiar and too unique. From then on, all the disciples of the Holy Court prostrated themselves in admiration of this young miss of Shangluo's remarkable abilities. Yi Fei was also very envious. One had to know that the Grand Principal almost never appeared due to the exhaustion of his lifespan. He had only appeared twice. The first time was when he fought against the lightning clone of the Tian Fa Quasi-Emperor. The second time was when Shangluo invited him to announce her right to use the Saint Tower. This made Yi Fei very curious. After instructing Gong Ji and the others in their cultivation and completing the last responsibility of the saint, Yi Fei didn't stand on ceremony and directly squeezed into the Saint Tower. Looking at the familiar spirit vein and spirit river that didn't belong to him now, Yi Fei felt a little disappointed. In the beast mark space, Xiao Chao and the dragon turtle were even more teary-eyed. Xiao Chao clearly felt that the dragon turtle should continue to lose weight. The dragon turtle also realized that recently, it didn't have enough spirit stones to eat. Only Shangluo was left. Sitting cross-legged in the spirit river and cultivating, Shangluo stood up vigilantly when she saw Yi Fei come in. Yi Fei, what are you doing? This Saint Tower now belongs to me. You can't cultivate even if you want to. Yi Fei's face darkened. He resisted the urge to grab Shangluo and beat her up. He helplessly shook his head and said, I've already given you the Saint Tower, so I won't take it back. I'm looking for you this time for something else. You want me to help you translate the high-grade Witchcraft Sutra? Shangluo's eyes sparkled like two bright stars. However, when he felt her gaze, Yi Fei felt his scalp tingle. This girl wouldn't ask for too much again, right? Chapter 1466. Shopping Mall? And Yi Fei almost didn't realize that it was a shopping mall in his previous life. Shangluo was also speechless. He put his hand on his forehead and said, I forgot that you're a cultivation maniac. Other than cultivation, you probably don't even know how many empires there are in Zhongzhou. Nonsense, how can I not know such a simple thing? Yi Fei was obviously not convinced. Shangluo caught Yi Fei's weakness and immediately asked, Then let me ask you, how many empires are there in Zhongzhou? This was awkward. Yi Fei really didn't know how many empires there were in Zhongzhou. Anyway, there were a lot of them. He immediately shook his head gloomily and looked deeply at Shangluo. Why do I feel that you want me to go to the shopping mall? Not me, but my aunt. My aunt is the one who manages the business alliance. She's like me, a genius in business. Shangluo pointed out. Yi Fei vaguely understood. Since she was a genius in business, she also noticed him. It seems like I have something valuable that the business alliance values. Could it be related to the witchcraft scripture? It can't be wrong, it must be related to the witchcraft scripture. His thoughts became clearer. After all, when he asked Shangluo to translate the intermediate witchcraft scripture, Shangluo didn't invite him. When he took out the advanced witchcraft scripture, Shangluo immediately invited him. Could it be that the advanced witchcraft scripture is very important to the business alliance? That's strange. Don't you have the witchcraft scripture? Yi Fei was suddenly confused. Shangluo rolled his eyes and sighed. The witchcraft bloodline isn't as powerful as you think. I can't explain too much about it. You should go to the shopping mall and ask my aunt. The only thing I can tell you is that you're not the only genius we've invited. We've invited others before you. We invited a lot of people. Also, you must go there as soon as possible. Maybe you can ask my aunt to translate the witchcraft scripture for you for free. If you're late, you'll have to pay a heavy price. As for how heavy the price would be, Yi Fei looked at the empty space in his belt and had a deep understanding. He immediately nodded as if he was facing a great enemy and said, "Then let's go now." Shang Luo blinked her eyes and said resolutely, "No, this fairy is now running away from home. Since I've left, I definitely can't go back. You go there yourself. Here, this is the token to go to the merchant city. As long as you go to any first-class empire's imperial capital in the central continent, there will be a manager from the merchant union. Teleport there." Yi took the token and asked Shangluo Fei's words. "Which one is the closest to the real martial sacred academy?" Shang Luo nearly vomited blood. However, seeing that Yi Fei was a cultivation maniac, she patiently pointed out the route to the nearest Tier 1 empire. With a wave of her hand, she sent Yi Fei flying out of the Sage Tower. She couldn't give Yi Fei any chance to get his hands on the Sage's Tower. Yi Fei was extremely depressed about this. If it weren't for the fact that he still needed to rely on the Shang family to translate the high-grade witchcraft mantra, he would definitely capture Shang Luo and beat him up before robbing him again. The dragon turtle had already taken out the little black card that it always carried with it and wrote Shang Luo's name on it. Just now, Shang Luo had discovered that a certain turtle was secretly trying to use its black mouth, so he directly kicked Yi Fei out. Poor dragon turtle. It was chased away before it could even steal anything. The dragon turtle was furious. Xiao Chao didn't blame the dragon turtle, which was rare. Instead, he seemed to be on the same side as the dragon turtle. Yi Fei was speechless. He knew that if he didn't think of a way to get a large amount of spirit stones, Xiao Chao and the dragon turtle might really starve. Moreover, he needed a huge amount of resources to cultivate the God of War path and the War Demon path. Only then could he quickly improve and fuse with the power of despair for the 6th time. Fusing with the power of despair 5 times can only allow me to reach the level of a super genius. If I want to become a top genius like Shui Yun, I need to at least reach the 9th level of the God of War path. Although he had already defeated Shui Yun, Yi Fei was still very wary of this top genius of the Blade God Valley. He knew very well that if the two of them hadn't competed in terms of invincible will and he happened to have the advantage of the Spirit Sea, he might have lost that battle. The reason was very simple. If he wasn't a top genius, it was impossible for him to have the powerful Spirit Sea of a top genius. Even if he reached the 9th level of the God of War path, it wouldn't be enough. Putting aside factors like the martial arts domain, Yi Fei knew that if he really fought with Shui Yun, the chances of him winning would only be 50-50. At the same time, after this exchange with Shui Yun, Yi Fei increasingly felt that he had been very lucky to have defeated goddess Lu Qing. Lu Qing is an exceptional genius. Although she comes from a quasi-emperor family and doesn't have as many resources as a martial emperor family like the Blade God Valley, it is impossible that she doesn't know about the existence of the Soul True Dominion. However, in the previous battle, Lu Qing didn't use the Soul True Dominion. Instead, she used an ordinary domain. Either she has already mastered it, or she deliberately hid it and didn't use it. If it was the latter, it meant that Yi Fei hadn't defeated Lu Qing at all. Instead, he had won by luck, just like when he had faced Shui Yun. The only difference was that Yi Fei had relied on his Spirit Sea to defeat Shui Yun. Against Lu Qing, Yi Fei had relied on a primordial heaven technique that was even stronger than Lu Qing's. It seems like these top geniuses and exceptional geniuses aren't simple people. If I immerse myself in the complacent state of defeating them by chance, then what awaits me won't be surpassing them, but a crushing defeat. If I want to completely defeat and surpass them, I will have to work even harder. Yi Fei's expression was grave. On the way to the first-tier empire, He repeatedly deduced the process of his fight with Lu Qing and Shui Yun. He was searching for their strengths and also discovering his own weaknesses. Along the way, he didn't enter seclusion, but he still gained a lot. Then, a majestic capital city that looked like 9 divine dragons crawling on the ground was very imposing. Yi Fei even discovered the aura of a martial emperor in the palace of the capital city. The emperor of the first-tier empire is actually a martial emperor. However, this place is surrounded by 9 dragon veins. It's not strange for a martial emperor to be born. Even in the face of the martial emperor's spiritual force, Yi Fei's expression was very calm. He was no longer a small martial artist who had just come to the middle ground over 10 years ago, who had to look up to those martial sages and martial emperors. On the contrary, many martial sages and even martial emperors looked up to him now. I am Yi Fei, the former holy son of the Zhen Wu sacred courtyard. Yi Fei cupped his hands slightly towards the spiritual force that came from the palace. The principal is the Zhen Wu holy son. Demon Saint Yi Fei, the younger generation will surpass us in time. Holy son, please do as you wish. The old and decrepit will not disturb you. The spiritual force in the sky disappeared instantly. In the secret chamber of the palace, an old martial emperor with snow-white hair opened his eyes with a face full of lingering fear. I didn't expect him to be the demon saint. I heard that this person destroyed the Baili Empire because of a disagreement. Then, he killed the assassins of the Black Prison and fled in a sorry state. He didn't even dare to show his face. I hope he's just passing by. This old man's body can't withstand the destruction of this demon. Undoubtedly, as the news of Yi Fei defeating the Black Prison spread, his reputation as the Holy Sun dimmed. On the contrary, the reputation of the demon rose sharply. Fortunately, Yi Fei was busy cultivating and didn't have time to care about these things. Otherwise, he would have vomited blood. Compared to the distant attitude of the hidden martial emperor, the attitude of the manager of the merchant union was full of enthusiasm. When Yi Fei entered the capital city and found the merchant union, he found that a half-martial emperor general manager of the merchant union was already there with many managers. They were waiting outside. Chapter 1467. Young Master Yi, you worry too much. Young Miss is most similar to her mother. She is well-educated and considerate. Compared to the Alliance Master's personality, they are two extremes. They can't be put together at all. Their relationship is not good. Young Master, you can rest assured. He was the general manager of the Merchant Alliance after all. He was eloquent and eloquent. If Yi Fei said one sentence, he would say 10. He even followed Yi Fei's meaning and spoke like a spring breeze. However, Yi Fei felt that something was wrong. Unfortunately, the general manager of the Merchant Alliance was too enthusiastic. He invited Yi Fei into the Merchant Alliance and opened the teleportation gate without hesitation. Now Yi Fei didn't even have the chance to ask more questions. However, his personality is the complete opposite of Shang Luo's. This Shang clan alliance head should be easy to talk to. Yi Fei thought to himself. Then, there was a flash of light in front of him. The gate took him and disappeared into the sky. Only then did the group of managers behind him walk up with a strange expression. Head steward, young mistress clearly resembles the Alliance Master the most. She was even taught by the Alliance Master. Why do you say that she doesn't resemble the Alliance Master? What do you know? That young Master Yi must have suffered a great loss at the hands of eldest Mississippi. If I told him that the Alliance Master is better at cheating people than eldest Miss, this young Master Yi would probably turn around and leave immediately. How could we trick him into going to the merchant city? The group of managers finally understood the general manager's good intentions. They all started to flatter the general manager. The Merchant Alliance's gate was very fast. It wasn't just a single teleportation gate but a continuous one. After passing through a few gates, Yi Fei finally saw the outline of the Merchant Alliance's headquarters. From this, it could be seen how far the Merchant Alliance's headquarters was from the true martial sacred academy. If he flew for 3 to 5 years, he might not even see the shadow of the merchant city. Although it was called a merchant city, it was more like a small country. However, this country was completely controlled by the Merchant Alliance. Everyone in it was a business. Then, these merchants spread out in all directions of the Central Plains, forming the enormous business network of the Merchant Alliance. This kind of structure was much larger than the Dark Azura Hall. At the very least, the Dark Azura Hall could only open black markets in some of the important strongholds. They couldn't do what the Merchant Union did, where one could see the shadow of the Merchant Union in almost every city. Yi Fei had taken the Merchant Alliance's teleportation array. When he exited the space gate, he naturally entered the Shang clan's core area. This time, the person who came to greet him was not a steward of the Merchant Alliance, but a martial emperor of the Shang clan. "You must be young Master Yi. I am the steward of the Shang clan. The Alliance Master is already waiting for you." The martial emperor old man smiled kindly. Yi Fei, on the other hand, was secretly shocked. If a manager of the Shang clan was a martial emperor, then wouldn't a manager have to be a quasi-emperor to be born? It seemed that the Shang clan's power was extremely terrifying. Strange, since the Shang clan was so powerful, why didn't Shanglua cultivate at home, but went to the true martial sacred courtyard? Yi Fei was puzzled as he looked around at the layout of the Shang clan. The martial emperor old man knew that this was Yi Fei's first time in the Shang clan. As they walked, he introduced many things to Yi Fei. After passing through many corridors, the old man finally brought Yi Fei to a very exquisite warm room. He stopped and said, "The Alliance Master is inside. Young Master Yi, please come in. I will take my leave for now." "Thank you." Yi Fei also cupped his hands politely. Then, he walked into the warm room curiously. Soon, a pleasant voice sounded from inside. Yi Fei couldn't tell her age, but her words and actions were filled with a style that Yi Fei was very familiar with. "You must be the Yi Fei that Luoluo mentioned. You look quite ordinary. Why does Luoluo keep praising you? Even that crazy third master is full of praise for you when he comes back? Don't move. Turn around twice on the spot and let me have a look. Turn around twice on the spot. You call me a fairy? Why does this style sound so familiar?" Yi Fei was in a daze for a moment. He looked at the woman who walked out of the warm room. Her face was exquisite and her brows were like a painting. Although she was very charming, Yi Fei didn't feel at all pleased by her beauty. This woman's style of speaking was like an enlarged version of Shanglu. Moreover, she was so familiar with the way she ate the spiritual melon. Yi Fei suddenly had the urge to immediately teleport back, drag out the general manager of the Shang clan, and beat him to death. He was really screwed over this time. When Shang Jing saw that Yi Fei was only staring at her without saying anything, she smiled charmingly and said, "Young Master Yi, why aren't you saying anything? Don't you have something to ask of me?" As she spoke, Shang Jing's voice suddenly became faintly discernible. It was as if her voice could penetrate deep into his soul and make him answer any question willingly. Yi Fei was also momentarily dazed. But soon a ripple appeared in his mind. This ripple quickly formed an invisible wave that counteracted the influence of this voice. What a terrifying spiritual attack! Yi Fei was shocked. He looked at his aunt from Shanglua in shock. There was no doubt that her spiritual power was very strong. It was at least 10 times stronger than a top genius like Shuiyun. If he didn't have a spiritual C, he definitely wouldn't be able to withstand such a spiritual attack. My spiritual attack isn't terrifying. What's truly terrifying is your spiritual C. The records in the ancient books are correct. You people who have been abandoned by the heavens are indeed geniuses who practice sorcery. Shang Jing took a deep look at Yi Fei. She knew that Yi Fei had only practiced the intermediate-level sorcery scripture for slightly more than a year. In such a short time, not only could he form spiritual power, but he could also form a spiritual sea. Even in the sorcerer tribe, this was considered rapid progress. Then, Shang Jing became enthusiastic. She happily held Yi Fei's hand and said, "Little guy, don't be shy. Sit down and talk. You're Luolua's friend. If you don't mind, you don't have to call me chief. Just call me aunt like Luoluo." Aunt? Yi Fei almost spat out the tea in his mouth. It must be known that once Shanglua became especially enthusiastic and easy to talk to, it definitely didn't have good intentions. In the past, little fatty Pang Bei was often fooled by Shanglu. When he came back to his senses, little fatty was either being chased by devil monkeys or on the way to being chased. Yi Fei immediately became vigilant. He decided that it was best not to beat around the bush with this chief. He directly took out the advanced-level sorcery scripture and said, "Chief, I wonder if you can translate this advanced-level sorcery scripture." Chapter 1468. Since that shameless old man from the Zhenwu Sacred Academy told you that the Shang clan has the bloodline of wizards, then he should know that no one can translate the witchcraft scripture other than the Shang clan. Don't worry, I can translate the high-level witchcraft scripture, but… Shang Jing's smile was very sweet, just like an enlarged version of Shang Luo. Yi Fei, on the other hand, was very depressed when he heard this. However, in order to cultivate stronger spiritual power, even if he was cheated, he could only accept it. "Sister Fairy, don't worry. As long as you can translate it, you can ask for anything," Yi Fei said boldly. In any case, if he stuck his head out, he would be stabbed. Who told him to ask for help? At most, he would go back and beat up Shang Luo again to vent his anger. Shang Jing did not know what Yi Fei was thinking. Instead, she was overjoyed when Yi Fei called her Sister Fairy. After all, women loved to be beautiful, especially an old woman like Shang Jing, who cared more about her appearance. Yi Fei was also doing what she liked and taking the opportunity to get closer to her. "Little guy, you really know how to talk. No wonder Luo always praises you. Alright, since you're so obedient, this fairy won't take the treasure. You just have to agree to one of my conditions." Shang Jing laughed. Yi Fei was not moved and asked in a deep voice, "What is it?" "It's very simple. Business is business. For Luo's sake, I won't take any benefits from you for now. However, you have to create benefits for our business alliance. Only then can I help you. How about this?" Shang Jing seemed to consider for a moment. Then, she handed Yi Fei a token and said, "There's a strange small world near our business alliance. It's filled with all kinds of treasures that can strengthen one's spiritual power. You just have to go in and try your best to find these treasures. But think about it. If you want me to help you translate the witchcraft scripture, then let's make it 911. I'll take 911. Yi Fei, what do you think? 911? And you are doing this for Shanglua's sake? If I don't do this, then I won't get any benefits, right?" Yi Fei was speechless. Indeed, like aunt, like niece. However, Yi Fei was still happy to hear that Shang Jing could translate the shaman scripture. Moreover, he was also very interested in treasures that could increase his mental strength. "I wonder what those treasures are. What's the danger inside?" Yi Fei began to listen in detail. Shang Jing smiled with satisfaction. "Those treasures are called spirit crystals. They are some kind of crystal that exists in the bodies of phantasmal beasts. If you enter and kill the phantasmal beasts, you will be able to obtain them. As for the dangers, there are definitely some. However, since you were able to defeat a peerless genius like Lu Qing, as long as you don't go too deep, you should be able to obtain them. There shouldn't be any problems." "Alright, I agree." Yi Fei heaved a sigh of relief when he heard that it was a mirage beast inside. He had killed a mirage beast before and knew that the mirage beast was only powerful in its illusory technique. Its physical attack power was not strong. Since you agree, you can use your mental strength to activate the token now and rush to the entrance of the small world. There are a few other top geniuses like you waiting there. Shang Jing began to guide Yi Fei on how to activate the token. Yi Fei was even more relieved when he heard that there were other geniuses entering the small world. He suddenly felt that his aunt Shangluo was quite easy to talk to. At least she did not take the opportunity to extort him. Then, he followed her instructions and infused his mental strength into the token. The token immediately emitted a layer of black light. The ray of light wrapped around Yi Fei and teleported him out of the warm room in an instant. At this moment, another person walked out from the back of the warm room. This person's hair was standing up and his eyes were crazy, as if he could fly into a rage at any time. It was Third Master Shang, whom Yi Fei had met in the North region. Although Third Master Shang had recovered from his illness, his image did not change much. He looked like a person who would easily go crazy. However, such a crazy person did not even dare to breathe loudly in front of Shang Jing. He even spoke carefully when he spoke. Second sister, although the Shang clan has the bloodline of the sorcerers, we can only translate the medium level. The medium level sorcery sutra is already the limit. Since when can you translate the high level sorcery sutra? I couldn't in the past. However, after seeing Yi Fei, I suddenly had an epiphany and can translate again. Shang Jing looked calm. Third Master Shang was stunned when he heard this. Suddenly, his face turned red and he said, "Second sister, you're lying again." "What do you mean by lying?" "He did it willingly. Moreover, I didn't completely fool him. If he can really pass the test inside, he can learn the more powerful sorcery sutra, let alone the high-level sorcery sutra," Shang Jing said with conviction. Third Master Shang was speechless. However, he could not help but sympathize with Yi Fei in his heart. Shang Jing suddenly sighed and said, "Third brother, you know about Luoluo's situation. Do you want Luoluo to walk down the same path as me?" "No, I don't want Luoluo to become like you." Third Master Shang shook his head vigorously. His eyes were suddenly filled with madness. However, this time, Third Master Shang's madness was in a sober state. This madness was even more terrifying. Shang Jing said coldly, "You don't want Luoluo to walk down the same path as me. Do you think I want Luoluo to walk down the same path as me?" Possessing the bloodline of the sorcerers may seem mysterious, but who knows how much we, the women of the Shang clan, have sacrificed and suffered in silence behind the scenes. In a few more years, Luoluo's bloodline will be completely awakened. If she can't find that thing by then, I will kill her rather than let her walk down the same path as me. Shang Jing's tone was filled with a rare murderous intent. However, her eyes were red. Third Master Shang fell silent. Then, he took large strides and chased after Yi Fei crazily. Shang Jing opened her mouth. She wanted to stop him, but in the end she sighed helplessly. Her eyes were filled with sorrow. She helplessly took out a token and looked at it in a daze. If Yi Fei was here, he would definitely realize that this token was the identity token of the true Martial Sacred Academy. It was a rather ancient token. I didn't expect this black token to be so special. It can open the gate and teleport to a fixed location. Yi Fei looked at the token in his hand. He was filled with curiosity. He felt that this token was like a return talisman in the game of the future. As long as it was activated, it would allow one to return quickly. Not only was it convenient and practical, but it could also be used to teleport away quickly when one was in danger. Chapter 1469. This place is simply a second ancestor dragon abyss. However, the ancestor dragon abyss had demonic beasts. Here, there are all sorts of strong vicious beasts. Ordinary martial artists would die if they stayed here for even a moment. No matter how strong Yi Fei was, he didn't want to be surrounded by a group of vicious beasts for no reason. He looked around and soon saw a huge rock platform at the top of the mountain, not far away. It was like an open page of a book, very eye-catching. There were many strong auras hidden in the mountain peak. Yi Fei carefully sensed them and discovered that they were human auras. However, he did not think too much about it. After all, Shang Jing had him use the medallion to teleport here. She definitely had a purpose. Those hidden auras were likely the other youthful geniuses that the Merchant Union found. These youthful geniuses were hidden in the mountain peak. When they saw Yi Fei arrive, they were stunned. Who is this person? I don't know him. He should be the last person we were waiting for. Humph. He is just a minor half-step martial monarch that we have never seen before. To think that he wants so many of us to wait for him. Furthermore, he came so late. How arrogant! There were a total of 6 cultivators hidden in the mountain peak. There were 5 men and 1 woman. They all wore battle armor made of powerful holy tools. Just by looking at their equipment, one could tell that they were very strong. Aside from the Holy Institute's heaven-ranked disciples, only quasi-emperor noble clans or martial emperor noble clans could wear holy tool battle armor. Yi Fei did not see any insignia of the Holy Institute on them. He knew that these people were either from martial emperor noble clans or quasi-emperor noble clans. Hence, he felt more or less relieved. Since the Merchant Union dared to gather so many young experts from quasi-emperor noble clans and martial emperor noble clans, this place should not be too dangerous. Yi Fei walked over and politely performed a cupped fist salute to the 6. I am Yi Fei. Did the Merchant Union invite you here to obtain mental energy crystals? That's right. We are. Originally, there were only 6 of us. We should have set off 3 days ago. However, for some reason, you cut the queue and made us wait for another 3 days. The woman in the flaming battle armor took off her helmet and looked at Yi Fei with a strange expression. Her eyes were fixed on Yi Fei's face. This was the first time she saw Yi Fei, but she felt that he was strangely familiar. It was as if she had seen him somewhere before. I find you familiar. Have we met before? The woman asked Yi Fei. No, I've never seen him before. Yi Fei's face was stern and cold, as if he was very impatient with the other party's pestering. However, a layer of cold sweat had appeared on his back. To think that I would meet Zhu Xiaomei here. Fortunately, she did not recognize me. Yi Fei secretly raised his guard. He could not help but recall how Zhu Xiaomei had mistaken him for Grandmaster Zhu in the martial god space. She had hugged his arm and acted coquettishly. At that time, Zhu Xiaomei's ability to act coquettishly was truly earth-shattering. If he had not acted in time to pat Zhu Xiaomei's head a few more times and praise her, he might not have been able to escape. Of course, Yi Fei would not dare to say this even if he was beaten to death. He made up his mind that he absolutely could not give himself away in front of Zhu Xiaomei. He deliberately put on a cold, arrogant, and unapproachable appearance, as if he did not want to interact with Zhu Xiaomei. This caused Zhu Xiaomei's expression to change. She almost suspected that she had become ugly. Otherwise, when other youths saw her, they would all swarm around her like flies. However, Yi Fei coldly kept her at a distance. It felt as if he was guarding against a thief. Zhu Xiaomei became more and more puzzled. However, when she saw Yi Fei's cold appearance, she felt somewhat embarrassed and went forward to inquire. When Yi Fei arrived, he immediately attracted Zhu Xiaomei's attention. If Zhu Xiaomei looked ordinary, everyone would have ignored her. However, Zhu Xiaomei was not only beautiful, but she was also the little princess of the quasi-emperor Zhu clan. The Zhu clan was a quasi-emperor clan famous for refining weapons. Not only was the Zhu clan very popular among the quasi-emperor clans, even the martial emperor clans in the starry skies valued the Zhu clan. This was especially so after Grandmaster Zhu forged an emperor weapon a year ago. After that, he was promoted from a weapon grandmaster to an emperor's teacher. The Zhu clan's weight became even greater. As the little princess of the Zhu clan, Zhu Xiaomei was sought after by even more people. At this moment, when Zhu Xiaomei saw Yi Fei arrive, she actually took the initiative to go forward and speak to Yi Fei. This made them very unhappy. What made them even more unhappy was that Yi Fei was as cold as ice when faced with Zhu Xiaomei's attempt to strike up a conversation. He did not give Zhu Xiaomei any face at all. This caused the crowd to become even angrier. One of the geniuses quickly thought of Yi Fei's name. He looked at Yi Fei in surprise and said, "You are demon sage Yi Fei, the holy son of the true martial sacred court? What? He is Yi Fei, the demon who supposedly forced goddess Lu Qing to sleep with him," one of the young geniuses deliberately said loudly. This young man was called Zhang Yi. He seemed to be the person with the highest status among the five. When they saw him step forward, the others did not say anything. They only looked at Yi Fei with pity. Yi Fei was startled. He could clearly feel hostility coming from Zhang Yi. But he had just arrived and he hadn't offended this person. Could it be because of her? He turned his head and looked at Zhu Xiaomei. Zhu Xiaomei was also looking at him curiously. She even winked at him. It was as if she were telling Yi Fei that if he was willing to answer her question, she could help him out of this situation. Yi Fei understood Zhu Xiaomei's meaning. He bitterly smiled in his heart. He knew that if he told Zhu Xiaomei the truth, Zhu Xiaomei would not help him out of this situation. Instead, she would directly fight him to the death. Yi Fei immediately responded to Zhu Xiaomei with an even colder look. This left Zhu Xiaomei slightly disappointed. But she was even more certain that she had met Yi Fei somewhere before. Otherwise, she wouldn't have such a strange feeling, as if she had seen a relative. At the same time, within this strange feeling, there was also a strange childlike playfulness that Zhu Xiaomei couldn't describe. It was as if she could hug Yi Fei without any scruples and act like a spoiled child in front of an elder. It was also this strange feeling that made Zhu Xiaomei unable to stop her gaze from landing on Yi Fei even though she knew that Yi Fei was coldly rejecting her. Zhang Yi had clearly discovered that something was wrong with Zhu Xiaomei. He had already insulted Yi Fei, but not only did he not arouse Zhu Xiaomei's disgust, he even made Zhu Xiaomei and Yi Fei exchange flirtatious glances. The four young geniuses all had ugly expressions. Zhang Yi felt as if a ball of fire was burning in his heart. "Yi Fei, you sure have guts. You tarnish the goddess innocence and now you use such despicable methods to deceive the Zhu family's little princess. Little sister Zhu, don't worry. With me, Zhang Yi, here, I will definitely not let this demon take a single step near you. Scram! You don't have the right to enter the Shang family's small world with us." Chapter 1470. It seems that one must have a strong mind power to enter the Shang clan's small world. There aren't vicious beasts inside, but mirage beasts. Yi Fei speculated. Mirage beasts were a special type of vicious beast. Their physical attacks weren't strong, but their mind power was strong. They could affect the minds of martial artists and create illusions. In the minds of many martial artists, mirage beasts weren't the strongest, but they were the most difficult to deal with. It was no wonder that Zhang Yi and the others were fully armed. Yi Fei wanted to wear one, but when he remembered that his space belt had been emptied by Shangluo, his face darkened again. Seeing Yi Fei's dark face and silence, Zhang Ye's eyes flashed with contempt. Zhang Ye's eyes flashed with extreme disdain and contempt. Even the other four geniuses did not put Yi Fei in their eyes. It seems that the true martial saint is only SOSO. Facing us Boundary Emperor clans and Zhang Yi, he's still so scared that he doesn't say a word. He's from a small place like the Sacred Institute. His natural disposition has limited his future development. It seems that his defeat of Lu Qing was just a rumor. Not only did these geniuses think this way, but Zhang Yi, who was the first to attack, also believed that Yi Fei was weak and easy to bully because he didn't say anything. He pointed at the foot of the mountain and said fiercely, "Can't you understand my words? I told you to get down the mountain. Didn't you hear me, you useless piece of trash? I'm sorry, I can only understand human speech. I really can't understand some random dog barks." Yi Fei's expression was very serious, as if he was an honest person, and he had no intention of making a move. After all, this was the Shang family's territory, and they were all here. If he attacked, the Shang clan would be unhappy. Of course, if Zhang Yi still dared to talk to him like this after he obtained the high-level shaman scripture, Yi Fei wouldn't mind dragging Zhang Yi out and giving him a beating. Dog barks? Haha. Zhu Xiaomei's tense face suddenly bloomed like a flower. She couldn't help but laugh. This kid is crazy. The other four geniuses were also in disbelief. Yi Fei actually thought that Zhang Ye's threat was a dog's bark? Only then did they understand. Just now, Yi Fei wasn't so scared that he didn't dare to make a sound. He simply didn't see Zhang Yi as a human being. What did you say? I dare you to say it again. Zhang Yi was so angry that his face turned red and his body started to tremble. He had said so much, but Yi Fei actually treated him as a dog barking. He had never been humiliated like this in his entire life. What made Zhang Yi even more intolerable was that Yi Fei called him a dog barking. Zhu Xiaomei actually laughed. She was actually amused. This damn trash abandoned by the heavens. He actually used the opportunity of humiliating me to curry favor with little sister Zhu. Zhang Yi was unable to endure this, and a massive amount of fury and killing intent appeared around him. At the same time, his invincible will turned into a powerful wave of pressure that swept towards Yi Fei. You want to compete with me in terms of invincible will? Are you desperate? Yi Fei's expression was still very serious, as if he was an honest man who wasn't afraid of anyone. Hearing Yi Fei's interesting words and seeing Zhang Ye's flustered and exasperated expression, Zhu Xiaomei couldn't help but laugh again. Her laughter was like 100 flowers blooming, causing the four Boundary Emperor clan's geniuses to stare at her. Shut up! Hearing that bell-like laughter, Zhang Yi was so angry that his eyes started to turn red. He roared angrily and was about to charge forward and fight to the death with Yi Fei. Yi Fei was still very calm. He didn't even look at Zhang Ye's attack. Xiao Chao had already sensed that there were powerful Shang clan martial emperors hiding nearby. They would definitely not allow anyone to start a conflict here. If they were to fight, these martial emperors would immediately attack. Young Master Zhang, please restrain yourself. This is Merchant City, not your Sky Wind Palace. Several martial emperors with powerful auras instantly appeared on Zhang Ye's left and right, blocking all his possible attack routes. Zhang Ye's face immediately became distorted. Get out of my way. Does your merchant union dare to go against my Sky Wind Valley for a piece of trash abandoned by the heavens? Zhang Yi was clearly threatening them. The Shang clan martial emperors' faces changed. They had a bad impression of Zhang Yi. At this moment, another bold voice came from afar. Sky Wind Valley is nothing. Whoever dares to offend young Master Yi is going against Third Master Zhang. Young Master Yi? It had been a long time since he had heard such a title. Only the crazy Shang clan Third Master could say such word. Third Master Zhang, long time no see. Yi Fei turned around and cupped his hands towards Third Master Shang. He once again ignored Zhang Yi, making Zhang Yi furious. However, Zhang Yi knew that Third Master Shang was a complete madman. Even though he had recovered from his illness, he was still as crazy as before. Junior Zhang Yi from Sky Wind Valley greets Third Master Shang. Zhang Yi didn't dare to be disrespectful. He hurriedly bowed, but Third Master Shang scolded him in return. Get lost. Who do you think you are? How dare you call me brother? Do you think you are young Master Yi? Listen, if he dares to bark again, ask him to get lost immediately. Then, I will ask the Valley Master of Sky Wind Valley to come and apologize personally. Third Master Shang was not only crazy, he was also full of domineering aura. Yi Fei liked this domineering aura very much. Feeling this domineering aura, Zhang Ye's face turned even uglier than if he had eaten a fly. Green, white, and then white. In the end, he forcefully held back his anger and did not say another word. He did not even look at Yi Fei. This made Yi Fei very surprised. From Zhang Ye's fearless tone, he knew that Sky Wind Valley must be a martial emperor family. However, not only did the Shang clan not fear them, they even made the Valley Master of Sky Wind Valley apologize personally. The relationship between them was very subtle. It seems like the Shang clan is not just an ordinary clan with sorcerer blood. Maybe they are also a powerful clan in Zhongzhou. Yi Fei nodded secretly. Since Zhang Yi had stopped, he couldn't be bothered to deal with such a despicable person. He just cupped his hands and said to Third Master Shang, "Thank you for your help, Third Master Shang. Young Master Yi, please don't say that. If it wasn't for your master, I would still be crazy. Come with me, I have something to ask of you." Ignoring everyone, Third Master Shang put his arm around Yi Fei's shoulder and walked towards a small forest not far away. Yi Fei felt that something was wrong. At the same time, he felt a chill run down his spine. "Third Master Shang, don't tell me you know?" Third Master Shang was shocked. He then smiled bitterly and said, "Well, you are all abandoned by the heavens. You are all geniuses in witchcraft. It's not strange that you can sense it. I have never begged anyone in my life. Now I am begging you. You must pass the test. This is not for me, but for Luolua's suffering. My poor child." Chapter 1471. Third Master, is there a misunderstanding between us? Yi Fei felt that it was better to clarify things. Although Third Master Shang was no longer crazy, his personality was still like the wind. He would go wherever he wanted to go. Hearing that Yi Fei seemed to have understood the purpose of his visit, Third Master Shang immediately thumped Yi Fei's chest and said, "Yi Fei, you are indeed a good young man whom I value highly. I will leave this matter to you. Do your best, I have faith in you. There is a time limit in the pocket dimension, so hurry over. Don't waste any time." With that, Third Master Shang turned and left in a huff. He was as carefree as he was when he was mad and did as he pleased. Yi Fei was speechless as he watched Third Master Shang leave. Only then did he manage to say, "Third Master Shang, before you leave, can you at least tell me what you need my help with?" Of course, Third Master Shang was in a hurry to leave and report the good news to Shang Jing, so he did not hear what Yi Fei said. Perhaps because he liked Yi Fei, Third Master Shang was full of confidence in Yi Fei. He believed that Yi Fei would be able to do what others could not. However, Yi Fei did not even know what Third Master Shang wanted him to do. Since Zhang Yi and the other outsiders were present, he did not ask too much. He could only return to the mountaintop. A few martial emperors of the Shang family were waiting on the mountaintop. When they saw Yi Fei return and saw the mad martial king, Third Master Shang, personally putting his arm around Yi Fei's shoulder, these martial emperors looked at Yi Fei with a hint of respect. "Young Master Yi is here. Everyone is here. We will now activate the protective spell and send you into the pocket dimension. Remember, you have 1 month to kill the illusory beasts and obtain their spiritual crystals. After a month, you must come out. Otherwise, your lives will be in danger. Do you understand?" The martial emperor looked sternly at the others. These were all geniuses from the quasi-emperor families. Clearly, they had made ample preparations before coming. They all nodded solemnly at the martial emperor's question. Zhu Xiaomei carried her golden halberd on her shoulder. Zhang Ye's face was ashen, but he still did not leave. Instead, he chose to endure some verbal humiliation to stay and enter the pocket world. This made Yi Fei somewhat puzzled. This Zhang Yi is unwilling to leave even after suffering such great humiliation. Could it be that the mirage beasts in the small world are really that attractive to them? Or is Zhang Yi planning to secretly take revenge on me? If it was the former, Yi Fei would not mind. However, if it was the latter, then he would have to be careful. After all, Zhang Yi came from a martial emperor clan. Even if he was not as strong as Shui Yun, the difference would not be too great. A total of 8 martial emperors appeared in the Shang clan. They stood in different positions and were chanting the sorcerer incantation that Yi Fei found familiar. However, the mental strength of these martial emperors was limited. Every time they chanted an incantation, their faces would turn paler. There were only 8 words of incantation. After they finished chanting, they were so tired that they collapsed to the ground. The mountain that the 7 of them were standing on started shaking violently. Yi Fei looked at his feet. How was this a mountain? It was clearly a huge book that had merged with the mountain. As the book flipped, his mental strength suddenly felt an indistinct calling out to him. It seemed to be guiding him to the pocket world. Strange, why do I feel a vague calling? Could it be that there is some treasure in this pocket world that is fated with me? Zhu Xiaomei said in astonishment. Zhang Yi immediately became thick-skinned and eagerly said, "Little sister Zhu, you don't know. This is not a treasure, but the illusion beasts inside are deliberately mystifying to ambush us. Without a strong spiritual will, it is very difficult to resist these illusion beasts. I wonder if you can follow me. If it is me, I will definitely be able to protect you. I will protect you." Zhu Xiaomei looked at Zhang Yi coldly and shook her head. "Forget it. I came here to make my final preparations for entering the ancient starry heavens road. Let's split up. What little sister says makes sense. Since we have decided to enter the ancient starry heavens road, we should act alone for this experiential training. How about this? After we enter, we will each choose a direction. How about that?" A quasi-emperor noble clan suggested. His words made the others nod in agreement. Yi Fei nodded as well. He felt that this was a good idea. Everyone would each choose a direction. Even if they encountered a treasure, there would not be any conflict. It was also at this moment that a mysterious small world appeared in the void. This small world had a strange power that pulled them all in on the spot. Strange, why is this feeling somewhat similar to Zhu Yang's great dream enchanting technique? Yi Fei was confused. Back in the Emperor's tomb, Zhu Yang had used a shaman technique to pull his consciousness into a dream. As for this small world that overlapped with the void, it was even more wondrous. It could only appear when summoned by the 8 martial monarchs. At the same time, it could silently and forcefully pull people in. By the time Yi Fei and the others recovered their wits, they were already in a strange starry heavens. However, this starry sky was not pitch black. Instead, it was filled with a faint blue light. It was very magnificent. Zhu Xiaomei's eyes were wide open when she saw this. The other quasi-emperor geniuses were the same. Zhang Yi had a disdainful expression. When he saw that Zhu Xiaomei was not willing to follow him, he chose a direction and charged in. After Zhu Xiaomei and the others recovered their wits, they immediately scattered and ran in different directions. Yi Fei also chose a direction with no one around and quickly rushed over. Not long after he rushed out, a beam of light suddenly rushed over from the distance. There was a panic-stricken figure in the beam of light. It cried out miserably, "Save me! Brother Yi, save me!" Yi Fei found it funny when he saw the figure rushing over. He shook his head and said, "These illusion beasts are really stupid. I just came in and chose a place with no one around. You suddenly ran out to ask for help. Isn't this telling me that you are an illusion beast? Boom. Yi Fei did not say anything. He immediately activated the Azure Dragon Divine Sword. A huge divine dragon with a huge sword light and pressure instantly smashed the person rushing over into a meat patty. Then, the meat patty disappeared and turned into a strange blue light that gathered around Yi Fei's body. Yi Fei did not dodge. His intuition told him that the blue light would not harm him. Then, he stretched out his hand and gently touched the blue light. The light immediately turned into a strange energy and merged with his body. Yi Fei was not unfamiliar with this energy. This was because this energy was mental energy. When I kill an illusion beast, what appears is not a corpse but a blue light. At the same time, this light can increase my mental energy. Chapter 1472. No wonder, Zhang, you would rather endure the humiliation and come in. These mirage beasts are all formed from mental energy. As long as you kill them, not only will you increase your mental energy, but you will also be able to obtain more precious mental energy crystals. Mental energy crystals were special stones formed from mental energy. They were similar to spirit stones formed from spiritual energy. They were very precious and could not be found in the Tianwu continent. At the same time, mental energy crystals could also increase mental energy. They could also be used to refine treasures that could defend against sorcery. Yi Fei finally understood why his aunt in Shangluo wanted him to hand over 90% of the mental energy crystals he obtained. After all, a small world like this was a treasure trove for increasing one's spiritual force. Not to mention 90%, even if he handed over all of it, there would still be countless top geniuses fighting over it to increase their spiritual force. And the strength of their spiritual force was related to the strength of their domain. That's strange. The Shang clan could have monopolized this treasure trove. Why would they keep inviting geniuses from all over to train here? Could it be that the Shang clan was forced to open this place to others due to pressure? After all, small worlds that could increase mental energy were very rare. Such a small world was enough to trigger a great battle between quasi-emperors. It was not impossible that the Shang clan was forced to open this small world to outsiders due to pressure. However, Yi Fei subconsciously felt that things were not that simple. If this small world was really a treasure trove for increasing mental energy, Third Master Shang would not have made such a fuss and come here to beg me to pass some test. I'd better be careful. Xiao Chao, help me keep an eye on the surroundings, Yi Fei said to Xiao Chao. Squeak squeak. Xiao Chao held her green bow and was already prepared to show off her skills. The dragon turtle was lying on the ground weakly. It knew that there were no spirit stones here, so it didn't want to move at all. It was like a silent big black rock squatting in the beast mark space. Yi Fei was also speechless. After killing this mirage beast, other than absorbing a trace of blue light, Yi Fei did not find any mental energy crystals. He could only continue moving forward. Along the way, he encountered a few more mirage beasts and successfully killed them all. These mirage beasts did not have any corpses. After they died, they all turned into blue light rays of different strengths. Yi Fei was clearly a little surprised. These mirage beasts are all formed from spiritual energy. How much spiritual energy would that require? This small world is indeed not simple. He gradually developed a strong interest in this place and immediately sped up his pace. What surprised Yi Fei even more was that Xiao Chao was not only sensitive to spiritual energy, but also seemed to be very sensitive to spiritual energy. In the end, Yi Fei couldn't be bothered to search for the phantom beasts anymore. He just asked Xiao Chao to keep sensing. Wherever he found a phantom beast, he would kill it. Often, many mirage beasts were killed by Yi Fei before they could release their illusions. Of course, there were also some powerful mirage beasts that launched powerful illusions in an attempt to kill Yi Fei. They also changed into various familiar faces in an attempt to confuse Yi Fei, Xia Jun, Lin Tianjiao, his sister, Yi Xiaochan, and even Zhu Xiaomei and Zhang Yi. They all appeared in front of Yi Fei. If one's spiritual energy was not strong enough, it would be easy to fall into their illusions. Perhaps this was the reason why the Merchant Union only invited geniuses with strong spiritual energy to enter this place. Yi Fei was not a genius, but his spiritual energy was definitely stronger than any other genius. Because he had a spirit sea, the spiritual energy he produced was also endless. He also had the Eye of Thunder Punishment, which could see through all flaws. He also had Xiao Chao, which could discover hidden mirage beasts. With all these factors added together, Yi Fei felt like a fish in water in this small world. He killed mirage beasts one by one and turned them into blue light rays that entered his spirit sea. This also improved Yi Fei's spiritual energy to a certain extent. However, it still did not allow his spiritual energy to break through to the level of an exceptional genius. It was just that his spiritual energy was stronger than the average peak genius, and his chances of breaking through to Earth-rank quasi-emperor in the future were higher. No, this is still not enough. My goal is not to become an Earth-rank quasi-emperor, but a Heaven-rank quasi-emperor. If I want to break through, I will become the strongest. After killing another strong mirage beast, Yi Fei finally obtained about 10 mind crystals. However, Yi Fei also discovered that just by killing mirage beasts, his spiritual energy could only strengthen but could not transform. Thus, no matter how much spiritual energy he had, there was still a gap between the quality and intensity of his spiritual energy and that of an exceptional genius. This gap was the difference between an Earth-ranked quasi-emperor and a Heaven-ranked quasi-emperor. Although the difference between the two was only one domain grade, the combat prowess they could erupt with was like heaven and earth. They could not be compared at all. It seems that in order to increase my spiritual energy, I still need to learn a high-level sorcerer's scripture. Now I can also use these mirage beasts to increase my spiritual energy and obtain more mind crystals. Yi Fei's eyes lit up. Mind crystals were also treasures that could be exchanged for large amounts of spiritual stones. Now, Xiao Chao and the dragon turtle lacked spiritual stones the most. At this moment, Yi Fei naturally had to work hard to obtain more spiritual stones. Even if he had to hand over 90% of them to the Shang clan, he would still be able to make a profit. Mind crystals that could defend against sorcerers' sorcery alone could be sold at a sky-high price. Continue to kill. Kill your way to the core area of this pocket dimension. I want to see what secrets there are inside. Yi Fei did not forget Third Master Shang's instructions. Although Third Master Shang did not explain it clearly, Yi Fei understood that this pocket dimension was definitely not as simple as the Mirage Beast. Half a month later, he quickly killed his way from the edge of the small world to the core of the small world. Then, he saw an incomparably shocking scene. In the core area of the small world, there was actually a very large blue nebula. Other ancient martial art practitioners might not be able to tell what this nebula represented and would only think that it was a unique phenomenon of the pocket dimension. However, Yi Fei had established a spiritual connection with Zhu Yang, the sorcerer. He had seen Zhu Yang's spiritual sea with his own eyes. It was a huge nebula. However, compared to Zhu Yang's nebula, this nebula was more magnificent and dazzling. Its area was also 100 times larger than Zhu Yang's nebula. Yi Fei gasped when he saw this. Oh my God, what level of sorcerer is needed to form such a terrifying spiritual sea? No, this is definitely not a spiritual sea that can be formed by a sorcerer. This is very likely a terrifying grand sorcerer. A grand sorcerer was the martial god of the human race. Such an existence could destroy the earth with a thought and crush the stars with their bare hands. Yi Fei finally understood why Third Master Shang, such a forthright man, had asked him for a favor. Also, why was Shang Luo's aunt so friendly to him? She didn't want any treasures and only wanted to help him translate the high-grade shaman mantra. At first, he thought that this aunt was easy to talk to, but now he knew that she was a succubus who ate people without spitting out their bones. She had dug such a huge pit in front of him without informing him in advance. This was not an ordinary pocket dimension of the Mirage Beast. This was clearly the spiritual sea left behind by a terrifying grand sorcerer after he died in battle. This is a sorcerer's world. Yi Fei was very sure. His expression was grave. Just as he stared at the spiritual sea of the grand sorcerer and hesitated whether he should enter it. Chapter 1473. Whoosh. The cold gleam came too quickly and too suddenly. It cleverly seized the opportunity when Yi Fei was shocked by the great sorcerer Nebula and launched a fatal attack. Such an attack was enough to kill any top-notch genius. Unfortunately, the reason why Yi Fei dared to stare at the nebula absent-mindedly was because Xiao Chao had been paying attention to the surrounding spiritual energy and mental energy fluctuations. The person who launched the sneak attack seemed to have launched a sneak attack, but Xiao Chao had already sensed it when the person approached. He immediately raised his guard. Although he appeared to be absent-minded, he was actually baiting the person to attack. Kill. Damn Mirage Beast! How dare you launch a sneak attack? Yi Fei was filled with righteous indignation. Suddenly, before the cold gleam approached him, he turned his head and slashed the white tiger divine sword at the cold gleam. This sword gleam had the strongest attack. When the white tiger divine sword collided with the cold gleam, both were destroyed and turned into nothingness. Zhang Ye's attack power is so strong. No wonder he's a top-notch genius from a martial emperor family. Yi Fei was surprised. He did not hold back in his attack. Almost at the same time when he noticed Zhang Ye's sneak attack, Yi Fei had already formed the Vermilion Bird Divine Sword, the Black Tortoise Divine Sword, and the Azure Dragon Divine Sword. They turned into 3 heaven and earth divine beasts and attacked Zhang Yi, who had appeared not far away. Does this demon have eyes on the back of his head? Zhang Yi found it hard to believe. He was the first to notice Yi Fei. He was also the first to attack. He even deliberately chose the moment when Yi Fei was absent-minded, when he was least prepared. He was confident that even if such a sneak attack could not kill Yi Fei, it could at least injure him. Yi Fei would be seriously injured. However, Yi Fei's reaction was unexpected. It was as if he knew that Zhang Yi was going to launch a sneak attack. First, he tricked Zhang Yi into attacking. Then, he took advantage of the moment when Zhang Yi could not use his true yuan to launch a sneak attack. Zhang Yi tried his best to dodge Yi Fei's Vermilion Bird Divine Sword and used his armor to block Yi Fei's second Black Tortoise Divine Sword. However, Zhang Yi could not block the third Azure Dragon Divine Sword. After all, he had already used all his strength when he attacked Yi Fei. With his veritable essence energy activated, Zhang Yi could only use his physical body to endure this Azure Dragon Divine Sword. Boom! The entire void trembled slightly. It was clearly Zhang Yi who had launched a sneak attack on Yi Fei, but at this moment, Zhang Yi felt that the situation was reversed. It was Yi Fei who had launched a sneak attack on him. Yi Fei had taken advantage of the momentary opening he had revealed after releasing his killing move to kill him. Poof! Zhang Yi felt a sharp pain in his body. The divine artifact armor on his body had been shattered by the Azure Dragon Divine Sword. A long wound appeared on his chest. However, no blood spurted out. Instead, Zhang Ye's flesh emitted a yellow divine light that blocked the remaining aura of the Azure Dragon Divine Sword. Bloodline defense. Is that the special bloodline of Skygale Valley? Yi Fei was a little surprised. If he had known that Zhang Ye's physical body was very strong, he would have been more ruthless and ended this despicable person's life directly. However, it was not too late now. He still had a chance. Before Zhang Yi could recover, he could kill this guy on the spot and save himself a disaster. Kill 8 extreme heavenly dragons. Roar, roar, roar. The true martial four swords had just ended when Yi Fei's 8 heavenly dragons roared. They opened their mouths and spat out 8 terrifying beams of destructive light. Yi Fei, stop. If you dare to kill me, you will be going against Skygale Valley. Not only you, but the true martial sacred academy behind you will also be finished. Zhang Yi was completely stunned by the series of attacks. He still could not fight back. He could only continue to retreat in a sorry state. At the same time, he did not forget to use his identity as Skygale Valley to threaten Yi Fei. Facing this, Yi Fei only sneered loudly and angrily roared with righteousness. Bastard, you still haven't shut your mouth. It's fine if you sneak attacked me, but you even dared to use the appearance of Brother Zhang from the Sky Wind Valley to deceive me. You dog, why don't you open your eyes and look clearly? Brother Zhang Yesher and I are best friends. You've been deceived by a beast. As he spoke, the 8 heavenly dragons behind Yi Fei waved even more ferociously. They could not wait to chop this beast that was impersonating Zhang Yi into pieces. Zhu Xiaomei and company, who had arrived a little later, were dumbfounded. What's going on? Why is Zhang Yi fighting with Yi Fei? Didn't Yi Fei say that he was good friends with Zhang Yi? Zhu Xiaomei felt that her brain was not working properly. Since they were good friends, why did he have to kill them? He even scolded them as beasts. Zhu Xiaomei was not the only one who was dumbfounded. Even the other 5 geniuses who had arrived were shocked to see Zhang Yi being chased. Zhang Yi was so angry that he nearly vomited blood. When he heard Yi Fei's words and felt Yi Fei's killing intent, how could he not know that Yi Fei knew that he was hiding behind and had purposely revealed a flaw to lure him into a sneak attack? Then, Yi Fei would use this as an excuse to kill him and treat him as a beast. After killing him, even if it was later discovered that he was not a beast, Yi Fei could find an excuse to deny that he had seen wrongly and had killed the wrong person. Shameless. This demon is actually so shameless. How am I the one who sneaked up on him? It's clearly this demon who is shameless enough to plot against me. Zhang Ye's heart was filled with anger. While he was distracted, a blood dragon had already charged over. Its huge dragon claws dug out a bloody piece of flesh from Zhang Ye's body. The excruciating pain made Zhang Yi scream uncontrollably. However, Yi Fei did not even give him a chance to catch his breath. He only attacked crazily without any regard for his life. Hence, Zhang Yi was unable to retaliate. He could only retreat with a sullen expression. He even shouted for help to Zhu Xiaomei and company who had rushed over. Quick, save me. This Yi Fei is crazy. Yi Fei, you'd better stop. He is not an illusion beast. He is the real Zhang Yi. Zhu Xiaomei was stunned for a while before she started to react. She quickly stepped forward to persuade Yi Fei. After all, this was the Merchant Alliance's independent world. Furthermore, Zhang Yi came from a martial emperor noble clan like the Skywind Valley. If he died, they would definitely be implicated. Naturally, Yi Fei understood this as well. When he saw how crafty Zhang Yi was, he understood that continuing to chase him down was no longer realistic. After all, he had not completely graduated from the true martial sacred academy. While he could vent his anger by killing Zhang Yi, the Skywind Valley would follow. Then, he would have endless revenge from the true martial sacred academy. Chapter 1474. Brother Zhang, are you really not in pain? Do you really not need my help to treat your injuries? Yi Fei had an honest and sincere expression, but there was also a faint trace of apology and worry. He even went out of his way to retrieve the bloody piece of meat that Zhang Yi had lost and returned it apologetically. When Zhang Yi saw the piece of meat dyed red with blood, he immediately felt his body twitch with pain. Then, He became so angry that his eyes emitted two beams of green light. He even wanted to jump up and fight it out with Yi Fei. However, before Zhang Yi could fly into a rage, Yi Fei's concerned expression suddenly changed. He shouted sternly at Zhang Yi, "Brother Zhang, to think that I respected Skywind Valley and even wanted to resolve our grudges after we left. Why did you sneak attack me without saying anything the moment you saw me? If not for my quick reaction, wouldn't I have killed you? Did you kill me?" "What? Zhang Yi sneak attacked Yi Fei?" The two quasi-emperor clan geniuses were originally somewhat dissatisfied with Yi Fei. However, when they heard that it was Zhang Yi who sneak attacked first, they revealed a trace of disdain in their eyes even though they did not say anything. Zhu Xiaomei's face was filled with disgust. If not for the fact that Zhang Yi came from Skywind Valley and was not someone that the quasi-emperor clans could afford to offend, given Zhu Xiaomei's personality, she would have scolded him on the spot. This was the behavior of a petty person. Zhang Yi sensed the change in their expressions and immediately felt stifled in his heart. He nearly fainted on the spot. It was clearly Yi Fei who lured him into a trap and then shamelessly sneak attacked him. In the end, after Yi Fei said this, he was the one who became a shameless petty person. Zhang Yi even had the thought of perishing together with Yi Fei. However, his rationality told him that he absolutely could not attack Yi Fei at this time. If he attacked, he would be admitting that he was the one who sneak attacked Yi Fei first. It would be fine if there was no one around. However, with so many people watching, if news of this spread, it would not only damage Skywind Valley's reputation. Even the Merchant Alliance would not let him off the hook for his reputation. One had to know that the Merchant Union had set a rule. Entering this pocket dimension, one could kill the Mirage Beasts, but they were not allowed to kill each other. Even though Zhang Yi was the top genius of Skygale Valley, he still did not have the confidence to challenge the Merchant Union. Not only that, he had to quickly clear his name of sneaking an attack on Yi Fei. "Brother Yi, you've misunderstood. I'm not trying to sneak an attack on you. I'm just like you. I thought you were an illusion beast and wanted to test you." Zhang Yi slyly switched from a sneak attack to a test as he looked at Yi Fei with sincerity. Yi Fei's anger immediately vanished. Suddenly, he stepped forward and cupped his hands at Zhang Yi sincerely. "Brother Zhang, it looks like I misunderstood. Like I said, your Skywind Valley is a martial emperor noble clan. You are just and honorable. How could you do something as despicable as sneak attacking someone from behind?" When Zhang Yi heard this, he smiled sadly and sincerely cupped his hands towards Yi Fei. "Brother Yi, I made a mistake this time. I promise that there won't be a next time." In the end, Zhang Yi slightly emphasized his tone. Yi Fei also looked at Zhang Yi with a burning gaze. Both of them had smiles on their faces. However, Zhu Xiaomei and the others felt a chill run down their spines. Even when the two of them spoke, there was a layer of sword light. If this was any other place, they would not care. However, this was the Merchant Union's small world. They did not want to be implicated. Zhu Xiaomei could only rub her head and helplessly walk between the two of them. She looked at Yi Fei suspiciously and asked, "Yi Fei, why are you guys in my direction?" "I should be the one asking that. Why are you guys in my direction?" Yi Fei asked curiously. Then, he thought of something and was shocked. Zhu Xiaomei also opened her eyes wide. "How can this be? We clearly went in different directions. In the end, we ended up together." "Sister Zhu, you might not know this, but the Merchant Union's small world is very strange. No matter which direction we enter, we will all end up in this direction." Zhang Yi took out some pills from his interspatial belt and quickly healed his injuries. He then explained to Zhu Xiaomei. Yi Fei's eyes flashed. It was very likely that Zhang Yi had grasped this clue and was able to ambush him here in advance. Unfortunately, with Xiao Cao's special ability to sense spiritual energy and mental energy, it was impossible for Zhang Yi to sneak attack him. Unfortunately, Zhu Xiaomei and the others had arrived too quickly, so he missed a chance to get rid of Zhang Yi. Do you guys know what this nebula is? I plan to go and take a look. Yi Fei continued probing without batting an eyelid. Zhu Xiaomei also gave Zhang Yi a rare look of anticipation. If Zhu Xiaomei showed this look in the past, Zhang Yi would definitely rush to perform. But now, his expression was very ugly. I don't know either. This might be a secret that only the Merchant Union knows. I don't care if it's a secret or not. Since I'm here, I must go in and take a look. That's right. Our purpose in coming here is to improve our mental strength. The mental strength from killing the mirage beasts is not enough to raise our mental strength to the level of a peerless genius. Our only hope is to enter this nebula. Another genius from a quasi-emperor family said. Then, the two of them actually joined forces and took the lead to walk towards the nebula. Zhu Xiaomei hesitated for a moment before following them. Seeing Zhu Xiaomei go up, Zhang Yi glared at Yi Fei with a venomous gaze before hurriedly following them. In the end, only Yi Fei remained where he was. After all, this was the spirit sea of a great shaman. He could not guarantee that there would not be any danger inside. However, when he thought of Third Master Shang's request, he hesitated. Third Master Shang is a man of indomitable spirit. He has never begged anyone before, but he came to me. If I don't help him, I'll be disloyal. Forget it, I'll go and take a look. Yi Fei was about to go forward when he suddenly saw Zhu Xiaomei and the others, who had been walking very quickly, suddenly slow down. It was as if every step forward was very difficult. Everyone, be careful. This nebula seems to be able to release a spiritual pressure to prevent us from approaching. Zhu Xiaomei warned. Haha, this pocket world is not as simple as just improving mental strength. There might be some amazing secret inside. What a strange pocket world. A nebula can actually produce spiritual pressure. Could this nebula be formed by mental strength? A quasi-emperor family genius speculated. Zhang Yi sneered and mocked, ignorant. Even a peerless genius would not have such powerful mental strength. In my opinion, this is very likely a test left behind by the owner of this pocket world. Whoever can withstand this spiritual pressure and enter the nebula will be able to obtain the treasure inside. Test? Treasure? The eyes of the geniuses present lit up and they moved even faster. Yi Fei was also a little surprised. Although Zhang Yi was not entirely correct, this invisible spiritual pressure might really be some kind of test. Chapter 1475. As expected, when Yi Fei tried to approach the spirit sea of the Grand Sorcerer, an invisible resistance came from within the nebula. This resistance was very similar to the gravity test that martial artists often face. The difference was that this resistance was not formed by ordinary gravity, but by a more complicated force. It was a more complicated and powerful mind power. Under the pressure of this mind power, an ordinary martial artist's soul and primordial spirit would be affected after walking for dozens of meters or even hundreds of meters. If they forced themselves to continue walking, their soul and primordial spirit might be torn apart. In light cases they would be seriously injured. In serious cases they might even be crippled. This was also the reason why the Merchant Union only invited top geniuses to join. Without strong mind power, ordinary martial artists would find it difficult to move around in the sorcerer world unless the martial god came personally. Unfortunately, the martial god had long disappeared from the Tianwu continent. This was why this grand sorcerer's spirit sea had fallen into the hands of Yi Fei, who was only at the half-emperor realm. The further he walked, the stronger the mind power pressure became. Gradually, Yi Fei's footsteps became much slower. However, his slowness was relative to the others. He was clearly the last to approach the nebula, but after a while, he had already surpassed two quasi-emperor aristocratic families. The top geniuses. These two top geniuses immediately flushed. They were unwilling and frustrated. It's fine if we can't compare to the others, But we can't even compare to Yi Fei, who has the heaven-abandoned body. Strange, this demon Yi is clearly not a top genius. Why does his mind power seem to be stronger than top geniuses like us? They were very unconvinced and puzzled. They would never have guessed that Yi Fei's mind power was not passively increased, but actively cultivated. Not to mention that he had also successfully cultivated the Spirit Sea. As long as the Spirit Sea existed, his mind power would be limitless. The resistance of the nebula was an obstacle to others, but to Yi Fei, it was like taking a stroll in the park. It was extremely easy. This was the same principle as carrying a sandbag. Both adults and children could carry it. The only difference was the strength of both parties and the amount they carried. The 7 of them walked towards the nebula together. Yi Fei was originally the last to walk, but he soon overtook the 2 geniuses who were lagging behind. He even surpassed the geniuses of the other 2 quasi-emperor aristocratic families in a single breath. Then, under their shocked and strange gazes, Yi Fei continued to walk to Zhu Xiaomei's side. Your spiritual power is actually so strong? Zhu Xiaomei took a deep look at Yi Fei. It seems like you weren't able to defeat goddess Lu Qing by luck. You also believe that I defeated her? Yi Fei exclaimed in surprise. It seemed like divine Lady Lu Qing had concealed herself very well. Could she have kept her sole true dominion a secret? That was very likely. After all, the sole true dominion was a secret that only the martial emperor aristocratic families knew. The martial emperor aristocratic families were also superior to the middle prefecture. The foundation of his power. If a quasi-emperor clan obtained such a foundation, it might break the balance of power in the central province. Given the strength that you have displayed, you might be able to defeat Lu Qing if she is careless. However, you won't be able to defeat her. An exceptional genius will not be defeated so easily. Zhu Xiaomei shook her head and stopped talking. She then continued to walk forward. However, as she took a step forward, she immediately felt a huge spiritual pressure sweep over her. Her face turned pale and her body swayed as if she was drunk. She hurriedly stabbed the golden battle halberd into the ground to support her body and continued to walk forward. This is a strong woman. Yi Fei looked at Zhu Xiaomei with admiration. He had not chosen to help Zhu Xiaomei, as the 2 of them were not very close. His figure quickly brushed past Zhu Xiaomei and walked in front of her. Zhu Xiaomei's expression changed. The geniuses of the other 4 great quasi-emperor aristocratic families also had ugly expressions. They had not expected that even Zhu Xiaomei, who possessed spiritual force, would lose to Yi Fei in terms of spiritual power. Could Demon Ye's spiritual power have already reached the peak of a top-notch genius and is about to transform into an exceptional genius? An exceptional genius? How is that possible? Even the strongest martial emperor aristocratic family would not have more than 10 exceptional geniuses. That's right, this Demon Yi is definitely lucky. He might be able to surpass us, but he definitely won't be able to surpass Zhang Yi, who comes from a martial emperor aristocratic family. No, that can't be true. Suddenly, the genius who had secretly looked down on Yi Fei's dog-shit luck let out a painful cry. Zhu Xiaomei and the others also looked at Yi Fei in horror. From the very end, he had caught up and surpassed them. Now, he had surpassed Zhang Yi, who they thought was impossible to surpass. Whoosh! When Yi Fei brushed past Zhang Ye's body, Zhang Ye's pale face suddenly turned as red as a pig's liver. He bit his lips tightly to prevent himself from cursing out loud. This goddamn trash abandoned by the heavens. Not only did he set me up, he even surpassed me in front of everyone. This was intolerable. Zhang Ye's face contorted in anger. He stared at Yi Fei's back as Zhang Yi passed him. His heart was suddenly filled with a crazy jealousy and murderous intent. There was nothing he could do. There was a huge and terrifying spiritual pressure everywhere. Under this pressure, Zhang Yi had to concentrate all his spiritual power just to resist. When he saw that Yi Fei had suddenly surpassed him, Zhang Ye's mind was in a mess, but he relaxed a little. Nebula's huge spiritual pressure, suddenly, it was as if an invisible mountain was crashing down with a whistling sound. What? Zhang Yi was caught off guard. His mind was scattered, and his body was sent flying by the terrifying spiritual attack. He tumbled a few dozen times in the air before he spat out a mouthful of blood and stabilized his body. However, it was already too late. His position had gone from second to last. What was even more tragic was that when Zhang Yi regained his breath and was about to rush forward in anger to catch up with Yi Fei and wash away his humiliation, the sorcerer world suddenly produced an extremely strong resistance. It directly threw Zhang Yi out of the sorcerer world. Yi Fei, damn, Zhang Yi cursed in anger, but he was already thrown out without any resistance. The remaining geniuses then realized that they only had one chance. If they failed to pass, they would immediately be thrown out of this small world. Poor Zhang Yi. Zhu Xiaomei suddenly felt some sympathy for Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi came from a martial emperor family and was a top genius. He should be the strongest among them, and also the one with the most hope of entering the nebula. Who would have thought that the result would be so unexpected? Chapter 1476. Zhu Xiaomei was indeed a strong woman. Perhaps this had something to do with the Zhu clan's special cultivation method. The Zhu clan was the only blacksmith clan. The children of this quasi-emperor clan were exposed to the knowledge of blacksmithing from a young age. Through this knowledge, they had forged a steel-like will. Even though the spiritual pressure around her continued to increase, causing Zhu Xiaomei's body to sway left and right as she walked, she still persisted. The golden halberd was the crutch that supported her. The formless spiritual power and the unique telekinesis of blacksmiths were the strength that supported her. She just stared at Yi Fei's back, as if looking for a support, a spiritual pillar, a target that she had to chase after and surpass. She continued to move forward. Even though it was difficult, even though she staggered, she never gave up. She continued to move forward. Zhu Xiaomei's persistence moved Yi Fei. The remaining 4 young geniuses also widened their eyes in disbelief, and then their faces were filled with shame. She was a woman, yet she was so persistent and unwilling to admit defeat. How could men like them cower and feel fear at this moment? Let's go all out. A quasi-emperor clan genius fighting spirit was ignited. Yes, let's go all out. The remaining 3 were also filled with fighting spirit. They no longer hid and activated their strongest spiritual power, taking large strides forward. 10 steps, 100 steps, bang. The weakest quasi-emperor clan genius finally couldn't withstand the increasing spiritual pressure. His body flew out uncontrollably and was thrown out of the sorcerer world. Then the second, the third. Although these quasi-emperor clan geniuses were filled with fighting spirit, in the end, this wasn't a competition of battle strength, but of spiritual power and willpower. This was the test of the nebula. Currently, only 2 people were able to persist in this test. One was Yi Fei, and the other was Zhu Xiaomei. Zhu Xiaomei's condition wasn't good. She wasn't like Yi Fei, who had a spiritual sea that could provide a large amount of spiritual power. She was able to persist because of her steel-like willpower that had been honed through blacksmithing, as well as her innate unwillingness to admit defeat. She didn't know why, but when she saw Yi Fei's back, Zhu Xiaomei felt a sense of familiarity. It was as if she had seen him before, but she couldn't remember where. She was able to persist because she didn't want to give up on exploring this nebula. She also wanted to know where she had seen Yi Fei before, and why Yi Fei gave her a strange feeling as if she was an elder. In the face of Zhu Xiaomei's persistent gaze, a chill ran down Yi Fei's spine and he broke out in a cold sweat. Don't tell me that this girl has already seen through my identity? But that's right. I definitely can't. That, Yi Fei firmly believed that if Zhu Xiaomei were to find out that he had once turned into tyrannical law, hit Grandmaster Zhu with his stick, and then turned back into Grandmaster Zhu, causing Zhu Xiaomei to misunderstand and hug him like a spoiled child, the consequences would definitely be catastrophic. I don't want to be chased by a woman with an iron will, Yi Fei muttered softly. Then, his expression changed. The spiritual pressure in front of him had become even stronger. Even his spirit sea felt as if it couldn't withstand it. He immediately slowed down his footsteps and stood on the spot. He began to cultivate the Intermediate Shaman Sutra. Just like that, he continued to move forward slowly and steadily. Seeing that Yi Fei's footsteps had finally slowed down, Zhu Xiaomei finally let out a sigh of relief. She was already close to her limit. Even if she had an iron will, she wouldn't be able to take another step forward. Looks like it's the same for him. We're not exceptional geniuses after all. However, even if we are, it's impossible for us to pass through this nebula. This nebula is too mysterious. Perhaps even the Commerce Alliance's own people wouldn't be able to enter. Zhu Xiaomei shook her head. She didn't persist any longer. Sometimes perseverance was the key to victory. Sometimes perseverance would lead to even more painful failures. In Zhu Xiaomei's eyes, even if Yi Fei's spiritual power was stronger than hers, being able to get within 100 steps of the nebula was already his limit. If he continued, the spiritual pressure would be even stronger. It might even completely crush their spiritual power. That was indeed the case. Yi Fei's spirit sea was already close to its limit. After all, he hadn't cultivated the complete Shaman Sutra. However, the strength of this spiritual pressure was very likely to be specially prepared to test Magi. Whoosh! Zhu Xiaomei forced herself to take another step forward. Finally, she couldn't withstand the increased spiritual pressure anymore. She was violently knocked out of this pocket dimension. However, in the end, Zhu Xiaomei still subconsciously glanced at Yi Fei. Then, she widened her eyes in disbelief. After pausing for about 15 minutes, Yi Fei actually lifted his foot again and resolutely continued walking towards the nebula. At the same time, there was a large amount of blue light in his hand. Rays of light surged into his body and strengthened his spiritual power. It's spiritual power crystals. Why didn't I think of using these spiritual power crystals? But even if he has them, it's impossible for him to enter that nebula. Zhu Xiaomei's face was full of unwillingness, but she was still forcefully thrown out. In the end, Yi Fei was the only one left in this sorcerer world. He walked with firm and lonely steps, continuing to withstand the spiritual pressure and taking large strides forward. Pieces of spiritual power crystals kept shattering in his hand. Xiao Qiao's heart ached when she saw this. Xiao Qiao felt that she might be able to consume these spiritual power crystals. However, with the spiritual power converted from these spiritual power crystals, Yi Fei's spiritual sea, which was already close to drying up, started to ripple slightly. These ripples caused a trace of color to appear on Yi Fei's pale face. His body was ramrod straight. 10 steps, 20 steps, 30 steps. He continued to move forward. As he got closer to the nebula, Yi Fei looked at the spiritual sea of this grand magus in shock. This was no longer a sea, but a real nebula. It was like a mysterious spiritual universe. Then, Yi Fei took a deep breath, lifted his foot, and took the last step, which was also the 100th step. Affected by his step, the entire nebula suddenly surged violently. Then, a large golden hand suddenly reached out from the nebula. It coldly and mercilessly grabbed at Yi Fei. Yi Fei's expression immediately turned ugly and nervous. Could it be that the Grand Magus in this pocket dimension is still alive? At this moment, Yi Fei actually had the urge to turn around and run for his life. Chapter 1477. If there's no spirit energy or spirit energy, then how did this enormous golden hand appear? Could it be an illusion? At this moment, Yi Fei was extremely nervous but also very calm. Even though this enormous golden hand was incomparably lifelike, so lifelike that it caused him to feel fear. However, he believed in Xiao Chao's judgment more. Any attack must be supported by a corresponding power. This power could be either spirit energy or spirit energy. If there's no such power, then this enormous hand is nothing but a facade. It's nothing more than a bluff. Faced with this enormous hand, Yi Fei finally forced himself to remain calm. He raised his foot and continued forward to face this incomparably terrifying enormous hand. If Zhu Xiaomei and the others were here, they would definitely be incomparably shocked and incomparably terrified. The reason for that was because the aura emitted by this enormous hand was too powerful and too terrifying. This was not an attack from a martial emperor. Instead, it was an attack from a martial god or a great shaman. This sort of attack was sufficient to crush any exceptional genius. If they were in Yi Fei's place, faced with such an enormous hand, they would definitely run away. Without the slightest hesitation, they would turn around and flee to fight for that slim chance of survival. As for Yi Fei, he actually did the opposite. He walked toward that enormous hand and chose to continue forward. At this moment, even Xiao Chao and the dragon tortoise became slightly nervous. Then, that enormous hand, at the moment when Yi Fei had completely entered the nebula, loudly descended and pierced through Yi Fei's body. Boom! At this moment, the nebula started to tremble. It was as if waves were surging and the starry sky was shaking. Yi Fei looked at the enormous hand that had pierced through his body in astonishment. At the same time, cold sweat appeared on his back. At the same time, he was inwardly rejoicing. Fortunately, he had Xiao Chao by his side. If it wasn't for the fact that Xiao Chao sensed that this enormous hand was not a threat, he would definitely have chosen to dodge like the others, and not brace himself to charge forward like this. At this moment, Yi Fei finally understood why no one had ever been able to pass through this trial. It was simply too difficult. Merely resisting the spirit pressure of the nebula, without cultivating a spirit sea and being able to use spirit crystals to replenish one's spirit energy, even exceptional geniuses would not be able to enter this nebula. Clouds. Secondly, this nebula had another hidden trick, which was the terrifying golden hand. As the final test, it was obvious that the Grand Wizard was not satisfied with just having a spirit sea. To be able to enter the nebula, in addition to having a powerful spirit sea, one must have a smart mind, meticulous observation, and fearless courage. Only by meeting all of these conditions would one be able to enter this nebula. Yi Fei felt a lingering fear in his heart. Then, he couldn't help but curse in his heart. These magi are really crafty. I hope there are no other traps. Yi Fei sized up the nebula. Within it, he could sense a vast spiritual will. This will even affected his spiritual sea, causing his mind to produce countless thoughts. Then, his spiritual ripples spread out along with the nebula like water ripples. Suddenly, Yi Fei had a feeling that his spirit sea was overlapping and merging with the spirit sea of this grand magus. His consciousness gradually blurred, and even his consciousness became unclear. Yi Fei, who felt that something was wrong, shook his head violently and opened his eyes. His eyes, however, became confused as he looked at the unfamiliar environment around him. This was an unfamiliar wooden house. A pale-faced youth was lying on a bed. This person was him. No, this isn't me. After a moment of shock, Yi Fei realized with some fear that he could no longer remember his own name. He had also forgotten everything that had happened in the past. "Eldest young master, you're awake." The crisp voice of a young girl ran in nervously from outside. It was a little maid who looked very much like Zhao Yu. Seeing that Yi Fei had woken up, the little maid was so excited that tears flowed down her cheek. This also gave Yi Fei a fright. This tigress, there will be such a gentle day. She won't change her tactics and come to kill me, right? However, as soon as he said that, Yi Fei was stunned again. Strange, he clearly did not know this person in front of him. Why would he have such a strange thought? And, who am I? Why am I here? Yi Fei looked at his own youth's arms. There were frightening scars on them. Those were whip scars. It seemed that he had been severely whipped when he was unconscious. Soon, a taunting voice came from outside the door. A young man, who was wearing a golden-furred beast coat, walked in with an arrogant face and said coldly, "Shang Jiu, stop pretending. You're nothing but a lowly human being with the bloodline of Magi. You don't deserve to enter the Magi Palace and offer sacrifices to our ancestors. This is just a small lesson. If you dare to go against me again, it won't be as simple as whipping. Little you come with me. A bastard like him doesn't deserve a beauty like you to serve him." He directly ignored the youth on the bed. The golden-haired youth actually rushed towards little Yu, who was not far away, with a sneer on his face. Bastard! Yi Fei's eyes suddenly turned red. He ignored his illness and suddenly rushed towards the golden-haired youth, as if he had gone mad. However, he was kicked by the youth and spat out blood. He fainted on the spot. 3 days later, when Yi Fei woke up, all he saw was a cold corpse lying under the bed. Later on, he found out that Xiao Yu had used her death to protect her innocence and also defended the last bit of dignity he had left as a young master. Why did you have to die? You'll have nothing if you die. You don't deserve to die for a demi-magus like me. Yi Fei fainted in front of little Yu-er's tombstone. Perhaps because he was too sad, tears of blood flowed out of his eyes. A huge spiritual blow struck his mind. He had finally broken through his spirit sea, which was impossible for him to break through. 10 days later, Yi Fei woke up. He still could not remember his name, and had lost all memories of what had happened. However, in his mind, there was only the thin and weak figure of the young girl. Little Yu. He softly called out to the tombstone in front of him. I don't know who I am, but since you used your life to exchange for mine, then I definitely can't live on. I want to avenge you. I, Shang Jiu, want to become the strongest shaman. No, I want to become a great shaman, a revered martial artist. I will do everything I can to revive you. I swear in the name of the great Magus ancestor. Shang Jiu stood up. He was no longer confused. His eyes began to become firm and vicious. From today onwards, he was Shang Jiu. His only purpose in life was to avenge his sister. He began to cultivate crazily, but in return, he was ridiculed, cursed, and humiliated by countless people. A demi-magus with the blood of the human race in his body wanted to cultivate magus arts? What a joke! Although Shang Jiu was the eldest son of the Eight Wind Tribe's merchant clan, no one liked him. Even his father looked down on him, and did not care whether he lived or died. Behind his back, many people in the Eight Wind Tribe called him a bastard. Chapter 1478. For 10 years, Shang Jiu had been living in the Shang tribe. He had been reduced to a slave and had to do the lowest and dirtiest things. However, this did not defeat him. In order to revive little Yu, he had to become the strongest sorcerer. In order to become a sorcerer, even if he was reduced to a slave, he would seize every moment to learn sorcery. In order to become a sorcerer, he once knelt down and crawled under a sorcerer's crotch to learn a difficult syllable. In order to become a sorcerer, he finally became the most despised sorcerer, the corpse carrier. He began to enter the sorcerer tribe's battlefield. Here, there were many corpses left behind from the sorcerer tribe's war. They had died from sorcery and their corpses carried various curses. Once touched, one would be tainted with all kinds of bad luck. However, Shang Jiu did not care. As long as he became a sorcerer, it did not matter if he was tainted with bad luck. Another 10 years passed. Shang Jiu was already in his 30s. He had finally learned most of the sorcery. He had also found many sorcery materials from the sorcerer's corpses. With these materials, he had finally become a true sorcerer. He had also become the only corpse carrier in the Eight-Wind tribe who had lived past the age of 30. At this point, no one dared to laugh at him or humiliate him. For 10 years, Shang-Jiu had carried countless corpses. Some were incomplete, some were whole. These corpses had already tainted him with terrible curses and bad luck. He had become the source of bad luck for the Eight-Wind tribe. No one dared to speak to him or even come within 10 meters of him. Shang-Jiu felt extremely satisfied instead. Without anyone to disturb him, he would have even more time to cultivate shaman art. Of course, no matter how bitter and tiring it was to cultivate shaman arts, he would surely head to little Yu-Er's tomb every single day to clean up the dust and offer a bouquet of the most beautiful and best flowers. However, one day, Shang-Jiu found that little Yu-Er's grave had been smashed. It had been smashed by the golden-haired youth. Shang-Jiu, no matter what, you are still a bastard child that my father acknowledged. There is a trace of noble blood flowing in your veins. But look at what you have done all these years. Not only have you been reduced to a lowly corpse carrier, you have also been offering flowers to a lowly servant for 20 years. You have truly disappointed me. You bastard, why were you born in our Eight-Wind tribe? Why did you become my father's son? If I were you, I would have died right now, just like the bones in the ground. Boom. In front of Shang-Jiu. Not only did the golden-haired youth destroy little Yu-Er's tombstone, he even shattered the entire ground, turning it into nothingness. Shang-Jiu's final hope, his final ray of light, disappeared. His eyes suddenly became as dark as the night. A bright, dazzling smile appeared on his face. Shang-Jiu didn't say anything. He didn't show any anger or struggle. He just silently and carefully took care of the flowers in his hands. He decided to leave the Eight-Wind tribe. Outside the tribe, strange beasts ran rampant. Many of them had the bloodline of gods or devils. Even senior magi didn't dare to provoke the leaders of the strange beasts. Every year, thousands of magi died. In the mouth of an exotic beast. Shang-Jiu had thought that he would also die like that, but he was very lucky. He had been carrying corpses for 10 years, so even many strange beasts didn't have the appetite to eat him. This gave Shang-Jiu a glimmer of hope, and he began to carry corpses again. This time, he carried the corpses of the experts who had died in the mouth of the strange beast. The aura of the curse on his body became more and more terrifying. At the same time, his magus arts also improved by leaps and bounds through the materials he collected from the corpses. Just like that, another 10 years passed. Shang-Jiu was already 40 years old. He had finally turned from the smallest magus to a senior magus who was comparable to a martial god. He decided to go back and take revenge. In 10 years, he had lost a lot. The only thing he didn't lose was the bouquet of withered flowers in his hands. Shang-Jiu returned to the Eight-Wind tribe with the bouquet of flowers in his hands carefully. In 40 years, the golden-haired young man had turned into a golden-haired young man. He had also become a senior magus. He had suppressed his own tribe and became the strongest genius of the 8 castes in the Eight-Wind tribe. Today, he was going to turn from a noble of the Shang tribe to the leader of the Eight-Wind tribe. The golden-haired young man was very proud. From today onward, he would become the king of the Magus tribe. His bastard brother had already died outside. From now on, no one would dare to use his bastard brother as a reason to laugh at him and humiliate him. However, at this moment, an unexpected person returned. The aura of misfortune and the eyes that were darker than the night sky were unforgettable to the people of the Eight-Wind tribe. It's Shang-Jiu. That bastard is still alive. What? The leader of the Eight-Wind tribe's big brother is a bastard? He's the lowest corpse carrier? The other leaders of the tribes who had come to congratulate him were in an uproar. Shut up. He's not my big brother. He's a bastard. Why are you still alive? A bastard like you shouldn't be alive. You shouldn't be my big brother. The golden-haired young man was enraged. The moment he saw Shang-Jio, he wanted to kill him. He wanted to get rid of this brother that he had never acknowledged. Shang-Jio smiled. His smile had a tinge of beast-like cruelty. However, his tone was gentle and sorrowful. It's been 40 years. Little Yuer, I can finally avenge you. He destroyed your tomb. Then, I will destroy him and this unfair world. Kill. A terrifying battle broke out between Shang-Jio and the golden-haired young man. Shang-Jio's magus arts were terrifying. He had carried corpses for 30 years and worked with strange beasts. He had only used one move to severely injure the golden-haired young man. He had also killed all the experts of the Shang tribe who had come to help. When Shang-Jio was about to kill the golden-haired young man and destroy the Eight-Wind tribe, some of the other leaders who had come to watch the ceremony took action. They were all senior magi. They could not tolerate a half-magus who had cultivated to the same level as them. This was a bloody battle. It was also a fierce battle. Shang-Jio had killed 17 golden-haired senior magi by himself. However, he had also suffered severe injuries. However, he did not retreat. Under the fearful gazes of the other senior magi, Shang-Jio lifted his bloody bone claw and was about to kill the golden-haired young man. You unfilial son, die. Shang-Jio's father made his move. He brought more senior magi from afar and was the first one to kill Shang-Jio. His hand turned into a ghost claw and peeled off Shang-Jio's golden skin on the spot, dripping with blood. Father, I've returned what I should have. Shang-Jio did not resist. He allowed his father to peel off his golden skin. Then, he dragged his injured body and charged towards the golden-haired young man who was also severely injured. Kill! At this moment, the golden-haired young man on the ground suddenly disappeared and turned into a broken puppet. At the same time, another golden-haired young man walked out proudly from afar. Shang-Jio, do you think I don't know? There was a senior magus who was proficient in prophecies who had predicted this day. A bastard like you will never be able to kill me. I will kill you. I will definitely kill you. Also, I am not Shang-Jio. Because, I am. Yi Fei. I want to wake up. Chapter 1479. With the undying sword soul in his hand, Yi Fei's eyes gradually regained their youthful vigor. He was no longer Shang-Jio, but Yi Fei. He was not a shaman, but a human. Then, he raised his hand and waved the destructive sword radiance in his hand. The grand shamans in front of him sneered. A layer of golden light formed on their skin. This layer of light seemed to be covering something, allowing them to withstand the damage from the undying sword soul. Only the blonde youth was stunned. Just when all the grand shamans thought that Yi Fei's sword was going to slash at them, no one expected that Yi Fei's sword radiance would slash at the surrounding void. Boom! The undying sword soul tore the void apart with the destructive light. The Eight-Wind tribe suddenly disappeared, and a vast nebula appeared. In the nebula there was a ball of fire. Upon closer inspection, it was a huge incense stick. On the incense stick, there was a huge red dot. The light of the red dot gradually dimmed, and the incense stick was about to be burned out. At this moment, Yi Fei finally woke up. He was no longer Shang-Jio in the strange illusion. He was Yi Fei. His memories, everything about him, were all back. However, Yi Fei's heart was still filled with complicated feelings. The illusion was too real, so real that it made him feel scared and distressed. He even felt a sense of despair spreading in his heart. This should be the Grand Shaman's spiritual world. The illusion was too scary and too real. Obviously, passing the spiritual pressure outside and entering the nebula was only the first step of the test. The second step was to face the Golden Hand. However, this was not the end. Just when many people thought that passing the golden hand meant passing the test, the Grand Shaman immediately initiated the third step. The test. The third step of the test was the core of the test. Only by finding oneself and waking up before the incense stick burned out could one truly complete the test left behind by the Grand Shaman. I just don't know what is hidden in this nebula for such a thrilling test. Yi Fei lifted his foot and started to go deeper into the nebula. Perhaps it was because he had passed the test, but the nebula no longer rejected him. Instead, it seemed to have an inexplicable acknowledgement of him. Suddenly, Yi Fei's spirit seemed to feel a strange calling from the nebula. After a moment of hesitation, he decided to go over and take a look. Shwa! Yi Fei took a step forward and passed through the layers of nebulas. Soon, he arrived at the inner space of the nebula. It was a grand palace. The exterior was made of pure beast bones, and there were countless strange pearls inlaid in the surroundings. These are the bones of sky beasts. Yi Fei recognized it at first glance. It was the powerful leader of the strange beasts that he had fought countless times in the illusions. These strange beasts liked to eat wizard men. Even many senior magi had to retreat when facing the sky beast. Am I in an illusion or reality? Yi Fei was a little confused. He subconsciously looked at the beast mark space and realized that Xiao Qiao and the dragon turtle were both there. He was shocked to realize that everything he saw was real. This was reality, not an illusion. Could it be that everything he experienced in the illusion was real? Those memories were also things that he had really experienced? No, impossible. Those are definitely not my memories. Those are the remaining spiritual memories of Shangjiu. He engraved these memories and placed them in the nebula. Even this sorcerer space could be left behind by Shangjiu. Combining the information he knew, Yi Fei made a bold conjecture. At the same time, to prove this conjecture, he still walked into the mouth of the sky beast. Then, a broken stone statue appeared in front of him. This stone statue was half withered and bright red flesh, while the other half was hard as stone. The stone statue was very tall. It stood between heaven and earth. Its eyes were as dark as the night sky. Its face was cruel and crazy. However, its right hand was carefully protecting a withered flower. Shangjiu, this stone statue is the great sorcerer Shangjiu. What I experienced was not an illusion. It was indeed Shangjiu's memories. He used his spiritual sea to turn his memories into my memories. He turned his hatred into my hatred. If I did not wake up at the last moment, I would have become Shangjiu's Shangjiu. Then, I will become Shangjiu and continue his path of revenge. Cold sweat broke out on Yi Fei's face. The strangeness of Magi was truly impossible to guard against. He couldn't imagine that if it weren't for the group of great Magi's attacks at the last moment, causing him to feel the threat of death and thus triggering the great Magi's skin on his body, giving him a moment of clarity and allowing him to activate the undying sword. Soul, he had most likely lost his memories and everything. Then, he would have thought that he was Shangjiu. With a heart full of hatred, he would have killed his way back to the sorcerer tribe and continue to replace Shangjiu to take revenge on the Eight-Wind tribe and the golden-haired youth. I was lucky this time. By the way, Xiao Qiao, Dragon Turtle, are you guys alright? After making sure that he was fine, he quickly looked at the beast mark space. However, he found that Xiao Qiao and Dragon Turtle were looking at him in confusion. Dragon Turtle even raised a wooden sign and drew a question mark. After Dragon Turtle and Xiao Qiao made some gestures, Yi Fei was surprised to find that Xiao Qiao and Dragon Turtle did not realize that he was in an illusion. Instead, it was Yi Fei who made a fuss that made them very confused. It seems that I was overthinking. I almost became Shangjiu. I should know him the best. He is a person who will definitely take revenge. However, he will not kill the innocent. Although he has the cruelty of a sorcerer, he also has the true nature of a man. Recalling the scenes in his memory, Yi Fei became more free and easy. If he guessed correctly, Shang Jiao should be related to the Shang clan. This was because they both had the surname Shang and were of the same sorcerer bloodline. Wait a minute. Half human and half sorcerer. This is seen as bad luck in the sorcerer tribe. All the corpse-bearers are from the half-sorcerer tribe. Not only will they be tainted with bad luck, but they will also bring bad luck to their descendants. Yi Fei tried his best to recall. However, ever since he broke free from Shang Jiao's memories were fading rapidly. Many of them had become blurry. He could only take advantage of the time before his memories faded and try to recall some key information. However, before he could completely organize the information, boom! Chapter 1480. Little Yuer, I can't revive you. The only thing I can revive is your beloved flash silver flower. Yi Fei suddenly let out a strange and painful murmur. It was not his voice, but a special chant of the sorcerer tribe. With this chant, the stone statue collapsed even faster. In the end, the entire stone statue turned into ashes and floated into the endless void. An ancient altar appeared in the sky, and it seemed to be guiding the path of the lime. At the instant the lime vanished, the twinkle silver flower that had withered for tens of thousands of years suddenly recovered its vitality and became full of vitality, and it emitted a unique fragrance. Smelling that fragrance, Yi Fei had a sour feeling in his eyes. Obviously, Shang Jiao's memories had not completely faded from his mind. Xiao Chao pulled the dragon turtle and ran out of the beast mark space with a surprised expression. He looked at the flash silver flower that had withered for tens of thousands of years and was now regaining its vitality. Xiao Chao even planned to run over and communicate with the blossoming flash silver flower. At this moment, another strange thing happened. As the stone statue collapsed, the originally stable nebula suddenly became extremely unstable. The entire nebula suddenly spun rapidly. It felt as if a terrifying whirlpool had formed in the universe, and the center of the whirlpool was the blossoming flash silver flower. Yi Fei was shocked. Without saying anything, he carried Xiao Chao. The dragon turtle also quickly grew bigger and carried Yi Fei. They instantly moved hundreds of miles away and escaped the terrifying whirlpool of the nebula. Strangely enough, the whirlpool seemed to be terrifying, but it tore the surrounding void apart and became distorted. It was as thin as a piece of black paper, but it did not cause any harm to Yi Fei. The collapsing nebula also did not destroy this small world and the many illusory beasts that had evolved in the small world. Instead, they all gathered into a ball of blue energy and surged into the resurrected flash silver flower. Nourished by this huge amount of mental strength, the flash silver flower began to grow rapidly. It turned from a flower into a towering flower tree. Countless bright silver flowers bloomed on the flowering trees. Xiao Chao's eyes widened at the sight, the dragon turtle swallowed his saliva, and Yi Fei was so surprised that he couldn't close his mouth. It should be noted that this nebula was the spirit sea of a senior magus. Just the burst of spiritual power in it could destroy a star. However, the seemingly weak shining silver flower absorbed all of the spirit sea in one breath as nutrient. In a trance, Yi Fei seemed to see a woman in a plain white dress in the void, faintly discernible among the sparkling silver petals. Unfortunately, Shang Jiao was only a senior magus. He could resurrect a silver flash flower, but he could not resurrect a whole person. Even though Shang Jiao had used up his entire spirit sea, little Yu Er's figure still gradually turned blurry in the sea of flowers before dissipating. Eldest young master, can no longer take care of you. I can no longer stay by your side in the void. A young girl's indignant and lonely cries could be faintly heard. Then, a line of sparkling blue tears slowly slid down the girl's blurry face. Xiao Chao was already sobbing. She kept wiping her red nose with Yi Fei's clothes. The dragon turtle also let go of the falling shining silver flowers, which was rare, and allowed them to fall into the small world. Then, the small world turned into a sea of shining silver flowers. However, Yi Fei's sharp eyes noticed that under the huge flowering trees, there was a row of blue crystals. They looked like crystal-like flowers that had fallen to the ground. These are also spiritual crystals? Yi Fei walked over in surprise and picked up the blue crystals. Xiao Qiao also looked at these strange stones in surprise. Then, Xiao Qiao habitually hugged the stone and carefully took a bite. This gave Yi Fei and the dragon turtle a fright. Yi Fei suddenly felt that Xiao Qiao's habit of biting stones whenever she saw them was not a good one. Roar roar! The dragon turtle shook its steel-like tail, as though it was asking Xiao Qiao how the stone tasted. Xiao Qiao did not say a word. She only hugged the strange fist-sized flower and burped in satisfaction, as though she was very full. The dragon turtle's eyes immediately lit up. Without another word, it pounced on a crystal flower. Its black mouth opened wider than a black hole, as though it was going to swallow all the crystal flowers on the ground. Yi Fei kicked it. Other than throwing one flower to the dragon turtle, he kept all the other 10 crystal flowers. Roar roar! The dragon turtle looked very aggrieved. However, it still hugged the last crystal flower and swallowed it in one gulp like a cow. Then, the dragon turtle's expression became very interesting. It was as though it had eaten too much and was unable to spit it out or swallow it. At the same time, the dragon turtle's body expanded rapidly like a balloon, as though it was about to explode. Roar roar! The dragon turtle was so frightened that it quickly used all its strength to spit out the crystal flower that it had swallowed, along with all the dragon's breath in its body. Just as Yi Fei thought that the dragon turtle's violent treatment would definitely shatter the crystal flowers emitted a blue light and absorbed all the dragon's breath that the dragon turtle had spat out. The moment it entered the dragon turtle's body, it even absorbed a large amount of the dragon turtle's energy. When the dragon turtle spat out the crystal flowers, the dragon turtle could no longer stand on its own. The dragon turtle's body was so weak that it could not even stand up. It could only lie on the ground with its eyes full of circles and bubbles coming out of its mouth. Looking at the blue light that emerged from the crystal flowers, Yi Fei's heart suddenly trembled. In his memory, a piece of unfamiliar information suddenly appeared. These are the spiritual flowers formed from the spirit sea of a grand magus. They are also Shang Jiu's hope for revenge. After all, Shang Jiu's greatest regret was that he didn't kill the golden-haired youth. For little Yuer and for himself, Shang Jiu set up all sorts of tests in this pocket dimension. His tests weren't to leave behind any treasures for his descendants, but to leave behind his memories. His memories and hatred were transferred to another person through the use of witchcraft. So that's how it is. Shang Jiu left these spirit flowers behind to create another grand magus, another Shang Jiu, to continue his path of revenge. For this, he did not hesitate to leave his entire spirit sea here and turn it into these 12 spirit flowers. Yi Fei's feelings were a little complicated. He sympathized with Shang Jiu and also admired him. However, he wasn't Shang Jiu. Shang Jiu's memories couldn't control his actions. However, I can use these spiritual flowers to strengthen my Tai Chi domain. After understanding the effects of these spiritual flowers, Yi Fei immediately picked one up and tried to absorb the spiritual energy that it contained. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.